It's week 3, and the Miami Dolphins are winning the Super Bowl. But we've got some charts to show you how it can be applicable for your fantasy teams. This is Stat Chasing.
Pat Fryer Helmo.
This is why I'm hot.
Anita Handjob.
Fix your site.
Jamar Alpha Play Chase.
Are you kidding me? Kadarius Toney?
You can't handle the heat.
It looks like we're finally at this point. You're right.
Good evening, Drico. I hope that you enjoyed week 3 as much as I did, because I was shouting from the rooftops about my Miami bags. Was feeling very excited about that.
Yeah, definitely a good week to be on Miami. Definitely a nice little boost to the standing advance rates, even if they are meaningless in week 3.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely calculating my advance rates each week. Just watching them slowly tick up. I mean, if you're not doing it, do you really consider yourself a best ball sicko? If you're not feverishly checking your advance rates, not even at the end of the week, but like at the end of every window of every game.
Like, because FFPC is so archaic, and then I have like a little spreadsheet that I can see like which teams are scoring, like what each team has scored so far, because you actually have to calculate that like so totally degenerate behavior. Yeah,
fortunately for the DraftKings ones are the ones that are the most difficult for, like, there's no way I'm going to go through by hand and count up all the DraftKings ones that are advancing and not advancing, but thankfully Spike Week has a tool for that. So I saved myself some time manually counting teams there. But before we dive into the charts today, I just need to take the L as the biggest professional musher. I haven't been a musher before. I think it's just being part of the ship chasing universe.
Now you're a content creator.
I inherited the mush, dude, because the Dallas Cowboys just got absolutely mushed to death after me singing their praises last week. I think I said CeeDee Lamb is moving up and to the right on the wide receiver charts. We're going to see that didn't age super well. I think I said Doomsday Defense. That also did not age well. We had Josh.
I remember I was saying like
40 yards.
I remember I was like, oh, well, we don't really, like, what if these players that they played are bad? And you're like, no, dude, this defense is that good.
Yeah. I'm King Musher. There were a couple other mushes that I had that, I mean, Puka, I know Puka was injured going into this week, but I was ready to call Puka the second coming of Cooper Kupp, and mushed him pretty good. So in the interest of a reverse mush, Kenray Miller teams, they're just dead. Nothing's happening. Kenray's done, guys. So pack it up. Yeah, absolutely. Cut Kendray in all formats. Unplayable.
All right, let's get into it. So, like last week, we're looking at this. This is mainly an efficiency chart, and we've got adjusted yards per attempt, which it's like a yards per attempt, but it rewards touchdowns and punishes interceptions, and roughly in the same weight as an EPA chart would, but just yards per attempt is more intuitive, and then touchdown rate pretty intuitive, and the size of the bubble is how much rushing yards they have, and with the scale on the left here indicating what 100 yards a game looks like.
Excellent chart summary here. My immediate takeaways is I believe that Tua is him. Previously, we had Jordan Love over in that area of the chart where Tua existed, but he came back down to earth this week. He finally did not throw 3 touchdowns in a game, so he started to see his touchdown rate and adjusted yards per attempt regress back a little bit. But Tua looks like him, looking like probably the best quarterback pick in all of best ball drafts. And we won't go too much into where he should go in resurrection, because I think we've got a special treat at the end of the charts today that I'll
We don't want to tip our hands.
A teaser. Yeah. The other guys I noticed on this chart, and now that we have a couple games of sample, I'm starting to look for guys that I think might be potentially undervalued by the market, or like prime for a good bounce back spot. I still think that Lamar is a good candidate for outperforming how he has been doing this past week. He did score you a lot of fantasy points. He just did it all through the ground. He rushed for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. He certainly got there, but he didn't bring any weapons along with him. I think that you're just waiting for that week where the passing game clicks for Baltimore and Lamar gets a little bit more done through the air and adds some on the ground, and you can get one of those truly massive weeks. The other one that go ahead.
Any concern about that? Well, maybe actually, you know what? Let's save the receivers questions and thoughts to that part of the chart.
But yeah, I think I know where you're going with that one, and yeah, we'll definitely touch on that. I think CJ Stroud, my early CJ Stroud take is looking like it's going to age pretty well. He's airing it out and doing pretty well. And when I'm looking for guys on these charts that I like as a potential target or someone that could have like a spike week disproportionate to what their previous weekly scoring has looked like, I'm looking for guys in that top right quadrant, but more closely aligned with that red dotted line for TD rate. So like Stroud, Purdy, Geno Smith, Baker, Justin Herbert, guys that are still getting pretty good adjusted yards per attempt, but having a relatively low touchdown rate for how high their yards per attempt is. To me, that's what I want to be looking at when I'm looking for people with potential for a really big game. And just to keep with the trend of the early look ahead, I like Justin Herbert for this next week against Las Vegas. And I mean, my goodness, that's probably going to be the most consolidated target tree you could imagine. It's like the dream for fantasy. It's just going to be the Keenan Allen show. So I really like that spot this week.
I think just to back up on CJ Stroud, I think the way I'm looking at this is that like, hey, he's a pocket passer who's actually been scoring decent points, but in terms of like efficiency, touchdown efficiency, he's been a pocket passer putting up points without touchdown efficiency, which is sort of nuts. Like if he can keep up this kind of like yardage production, like he should have some monster passing games. Like obviously caveat, it's true 3 weeks of an NFL season, but that I think that looks super interesting.
Yeah, 100% agree. Stroud, I really like. He would be someone that I would consider targeting in Resurrection if he's still going cheap.
For sure.
Any guys that stood out to you on the chart, either as intriguing buy low candidates or people that you're a little worried now that we've got 3 weeks of data that there may be a little more sticking power to the trends?
Obviously a little worried to see Sam Howell having produced kind of like so poorly. He's in the I don't like to see guys I was excited about in the Zach Wilson section of the chart. I do know I guess one note about it was that they were trailing pretty heavily. And so quarterbacks, they have to throw more aggressively. They have to take more risks, and those interceptions, they sort of like they come with having to throw deep and throw aggressively when you're losing. So I'm starting to get a smidge concerned with Howell, but not that certainly not throwing in the towel. Still excited because you are still getting like even you still are getting sort of aggressive throws. You're still getting rushing production, but I'm starting to reassess. I'm starting to reassess how I see that offense, where it would be, I think, a win at this stage if the Commanders are sort of like league average as an offense.
Yeah, Howell was definitely concerning this week. They were trailing pretty heavily and against a good Bills defense, but he took a pretty significant number of sacks, and he threw a lot of interceptions. He was still throwing deep and being aggressive when they were behind. So you like to see that. He's not doing the, I'm just going to hide and get me out of this game type thing when he's in a bad spot. So at least there's that's encouraging. But yeah, I'm adjusting my priors on Howell now and looking at him as he can still produce spike weeks. The rushing so far has not been as much as you would have liked. The thesis was, he can add a little with his legs. And so it hasn't been as much as you would have liked. I think he's still, capable of producing a spike week here and there, just with the quality of the weapons around him. And he is willing to push the ball downfield. But I'm probably taking Sam Howell either with elite quarterbacks that have very low downside deviation, or I'm taking him in 3 quarterback builds. Now I'm not doing very much of the 2 quarterback Howell builds where it's one guy like, say, a Geno Smith or a Dak Prescott plus Howell. I'm going to be more prone to taking 3 if he's my QB3 there.
That makes sense. Yeah, sad to see. But yeah, you have to adjust as well.
There was one more I had before we move on, and that's Trevor Lawrence is definitely concerning. His success rate was still fine, but his EPA was really poor. So I think he's getting a little bit unlucky, but it's not super encouraging to see this quote unquote generational prospect, Andrew Luck level quarterback struggling so much with, the weapons that he has around him, in a game where, frankly, people had them as a, pretty strong favorite, and they did not look good. So I'm definitely concerned about Lawrence. I think that his ADP over the summer obviously got to just irrational exuberance levels, which is why I didn't end up with a ton of him. But I would firmly expect him to fall a bunch in resurrection, and the market might even overcorrect on him. But yeah, definitely. I think we've seen enough so far this season with Lawrence to know that like 5,000 yards passing is probably that's wish casting at this point for a Trevor Lawrence outcome this season.
Yeah, I agree. And just looking at some of the numbers here, like I was just sort of doubting Sam Howell. But if you take out the interceptions and you're just looking at yards per attempt, and I guess you can't really do that, but let's say we just say interceptions game to game are a bit volatile. Sam Howell, he has 6.8 yards per attempt. Trevor Lawrence, 6.5. They each have 3 passing touchdowns. And the only real difference is the 5 picks to just 2 picks. I mean that I'm obviously being not quite correct here, but it reinforces the point to me that just hasn't been very good.
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison just to kind of show this is the tier and echelon he's been in, and that's why he shows up in the quadrant of the chart that he shows up in.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, we did have a tease we wanted to do after the chart, so we're gonna move through a little bit more quickly this week, and moving on to the RB snaps and usage charts. And so in the green section we've got rush attempts, yellow is routes, and blue we've got pass blocking, and gray we've got run blocking. And so and this is also scaled to as a percentage of the team's offensive snaps. Everybody knows green routes, rushes for running back normally good. Routes, you want to see your running back running a ton of routes. And then pass block is it's not quite useless because it does show that the team trusts them. But you don't accrue any fantasy points in the leagues that I play in for blocking, and run blocking is obviously pure garbage, useless.
Good summary here. And at the top of the chart, just as we all predicted and how we were drafting over the summer, Kyren Williams and Zach Moss have the best running back roles in the entire NFL.
Okay, and that's the end of this chart section.
Other ones that Rachaad White is still getting a really good role. Rachaad White isn't good. He's he's way under expectation. His rushing yards over expectation. He's still very negative, but he's at least getting a role. So like as a floor play or like I don't know where he's going to go in resurrection. I'm not sure how the market feels about Rachaad White, but maybe as like a 0 RB guy to make sure you're not getting zeros. He's interesting. Other roles that I thought were noteworthy here. We did see James Conner's role shrink a little bit in favor of Keontay Ingram this week. So that was interesting. Wondering if that's going to be a trend over the season as we see more Ingram work as the season goes along, or if it was just a product of them just sticking it to the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, James Conner, he is older. It seems like he's playing decently well or better than I expected. But that is interesting. That Keontay Ingram is eating into his snaps. And that's one of those things that it's super hard to call. You don't know, like, is Keontay Ingram playing well, or have they just sort of decided that, like, yeah, like James Conner, we can't play him on the field like every down.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think we need more sample to know for sure if that's going to be something that continues going forward or if that was just a little noisy this week. But it's definitely something I want to monitor. It can make Keontay Ingram an interesting, last round dart throw potentially. Just to sprinkle in here and there. Other guys that I thought were interesting. We're starting to see Swift climb up the charts more now that he's got 2 games of actually getting work. He's now over Kenny Gainwell. He is still getting a pretty good amount of work. The charts aren't going to totally reflect it because we've got week 1 in there where he didn't get anything yet. But I would anticipate him continuing to rise on this chart. And I would think Gainwell probably gets bumped to the backup chart before too many weeks here, if this usage split continues from this last week.
Yeah. I just flipped it to if you did just use week 2 or if you exclude week 1, then DeAndre Swift would then be 14th on this chart. So right around Rhamondre.
Raheem Mostert area.
Yeah. And so that feels like a fair expectation going forward, where he's 54% of the useful snaps, and you hope that the talent keeps him there, and that he actually like outperforms because of the ridiculous efficiency.
One that I noticed this week that I had a question for you on was we saw the role delineation in the Washington backfield get really, really stark when they were trailing heavily. And that's Antonio Gibson ran like almost all of the routes, and Brian Robinson he was just only out there running routes, in name only. It wasn't really like, hey, we're having him run routes because we want to get him active in the passing game. It was, well, it's a passing play and he's on the field, so he might as well run a route. But Antonio Gibson was a lot more involved in the passing game. I'm wondering, do you think that's going to be sticky going forward? Was it just a product of the game script? What are your thoughts on that backfield and how it's shaken out?
That is something where it's super hard. It's like really tempting to say, listen, the Washington Commanders, they've seen what Brian Robinson can do as a receiver, and they don't like it, and so they're putting in Antonio Gibson, but I'm having still a hard time with that, because we are that is one thing where we're dealing with such small samples, and I think it's like you said previously that it's interesting. You want to monitor it, and if you're getting a market that is just leaving Antonio Gibson for dead, like you've got all the reason to like take cheap Antonio Gibson, but I certainly wouldn't want to be paying for it like that's going to be the case going forward.
Yeah, very, very well put. That was my take on it as well. Like if the market's willing to give him to me for free, that's an interesting piece. But yeah, I don't really want to pay up for it. Anyone that you noticed on this usage chart, trends that you're interested in going forward?
What is interesting? I think it is a little bit interesting that Joe Mixon has held on to such a strong role, and this feels a little bit stronger than the market was expecting, and what they had for him last year, and it does sort of suggest to me that the reason that he took a little bit of a backseat on passing downs towards the end of last year was actually the Bengals liked Perine, and it wasn't such a indictment on Mixon. And I'm definitely, barring an injury, I'm definitely not as excited with my my backup Bengals running backs. They don't feel nearly as good as they did before the season started.
Okay, interesting. I was going to ask you how you felt about Trayveon Williams, because it does look like he is emerging as the clear 2 to Mixon.
Right.
And I know he's hung on the roster for a while, and they were willing to let Perine go. So I kind of, by process of elimination, had decided they probably like Trayveon Williams at least enough. Clearly, they don't like him as much as Samaje Perine, or he would have been playing more last season, right? So he's somewhere in between, Samaje Perine and all the other backs on the depth chart. But they did like Samaje Perine more than Joe Mixon in the passing game. And honestly, they kind of seemed like they liked him just better in general in the playoffs. Samaje Perine was out snapping Mixon when it mattered the most, when the chips were down. So to me, I thought there was a path, albeit a thin one, for Trayveon to work his way in and get some more opportunity in this offense. So how do you view Trayveon specifically in this backfield going forward?
I think that's a good point that that he is the clear number 2 over those other guys. And I mean, if he can eat into Mixon's share, it doesn't take that much. It doesn't take that much in that type of offense. Well, I should caveat that it last year it wouldn't have taken that much for it to be valuable. This year, it's not nearly as valuable so far with Joe Burrow injured and the offense not playing as well, and so it sort of feels like you are doing a sort of tricky parlay where you need the offense to get better, and you do need them to consolidate a little bit more in terms of like what you call it in terms of usage. Just for example, the Bengals, I forget how many times they threw last night, but I know they threw quite a bit, and Trayveon had just 7 routes. So you really do need that share to grow quite a bit, I think.
Yeah. So sounds like 18th round dart throw only on Trayveon, and not someone that you're
very acceptable 18th round dart throw.
But you're not coming in super overweight Trayveon or anything expecting much from him. That's just
you need a couple of things to break your way, and it doesn't feel like I said, it doesn't feel as strong as it did before. What's your take on it? It sounds like you might be the opposite.
No, I'm kind of with you that I'm not terribly optimistic about Trayveon going forward, but I think the way to play that backfield is probably through Trayveon. I don't know I don't know what the Mixon price is going to be. If people are letting Mixon go for cheap, I'm interested just in the role in the event that Trayveon just never is able to get much work or get on the field and Mixon just has this incredible role. Then I'm interested if he's cheap. But if he's still relatively expensive or going like in that dead zone range, I'll probably just opt out of Mixon and take a couple random dart throws on Trayveon, see if it breaks my way.
Yeah, I agree there. I definitely agree with that approach. Love to see Bijan continue up in the sort of workhorsey section of the chart. We still have Deion Jackson here. That's on me to take him out.
Yeah, my apologies. We'll nix Deion Jackson next week in the charts. I can exclude him.
But nobody else here is like seriously like other than like what we've already talked about. I'm not seeing anybody else here. I mean, Rhamondre is right around where we'd have expected him to be. It's a bit interesting that Madison has held on to his stronger snap rate, and that the Vikings somehow haven't been able to find anyone better than him.
He did finally put together a decent game this week. I mean, he didn't look great again, and had honestly what should have been a fumble. I believe they reviewed it for forward progress and ruled him down, which, my goodness, can we just get like any kind of consistency in what we can and cannot review? And that, like, I thought forward progress was virtually unreviewable. It's just based on the whistle, right? Like, we can't, but apparently we can review that. We can't review pass interference. It's just the officiating in this league is very silly.
Yeah. I agree. That is a bit strange. But yeah, I think we've sort of like I don't think there's anybody emerging here that wouldn't have expected. Like, obviously,
no, I think most of the trends are holding that we discussed. Dameon Pierce continuing to migrate towards the bottom. That's like get out while you can on your Dameon Pierce if you can get anything for him.
Yeah, agreed. And so let's go to the backup section of the chart. And super. I think it's a bit disheartening. Seeing some of the names up the top, Javonte. But to be honest, with the injury, that's sort of to be expected. I know Jahmyr Gibbs. He's been running. He did run quite a lot of routes in week 2, and then he sort of came back a bit in week 3, which is also a bit disappointing.
You know what's the weirdest thing to me about Gibbs is I thought with no Montgomery, he'd increase his opportunities on the ground, but I thought just by virtue of having him on the field more, they would end up, throwing to him a ton. He'd get even more targets. But that really wasn't the case. He was much more involved on the ground than I anticipated, and less involved in the passing game than I thought he would be. I do think that, and this is a relationship that we've seen historically, but tight end and running back targets being inversely correlated. Now, part of that is because of the area on the field where those players operate typically. And so I don't know if that's necessarily what's happening here, because LaPorta is operating in all quadrants. So I don't know that that's necessarily the reason why Gibbs saw fewer targets. But it's interesting to monitor. I want to pay attention and see if we've got like a decent negative correlation between Gibbs and LaPorta.
And so I think Gibbs is somebody where we do have to mark our expectations down a little bit, because like the pure nut run out that we thought we were going to get, especially seeing how incredible he looked in week 1, it doesn't feel as strong. And what is notable is his predecessor, DeAndre Swift, like absolutely beating the piss out of like any of the accusations that it seems like the Lions coaching staff were giving Swift. And so it does make me think that, like, okay, if somebody as incredible as Swift and able to perform as exceptionally well as he has, had the kind of bad rap with coaches in with the Lions. Like, does that just like bode ill for Gibbs? Go ahead.
No, yeah, I think it's a good point. I do think there's a little smoke here with how this coaching staff deploys their running backs. I think it's a little premature to say, oh, we're not going to get that ceiling outcome that we think from Gibbs. He's still a rookie. It's only been week 3.
Yeah.
I think we can definitely see his production increase as the season goes on, and the situation's very, very good. It's not the absolute dream, like, oh my gosh, David Montgomery goes down and Gibbs is just already delivering you 20-point fantasy weeks. But I'm still very.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not trying to say, hey, there's no ceiling now for Gibbs. I'm just trying to say, like, well, if you drafted him in the 3rd round and you were hoping that you're getting like 1st round production by some point, that feels less likely.
Yeah, that's very valid. One of the other rookie running backs that shows up on this chart that I wanted to mention, I thought this was definitely worth bringing to people's attention if they didn't notice. Zach Charbonnet, all the way at the bottom, but he's going to be slowly creeping up. He's seen his snap share increase week over week. Kenneth Walker looks like exactly what you'd want out of Kenneth Walker. He's a home run hitter, right? Like that's what he's built for, and that's what he's doing. So, you feel great about Kenneth Walker. I do think that Charbonnet is starting to become pretty interesting. His contingent value has got to be one of the better contingent values in the league. I would think, just because I wouldn't anticipate like a DJ Dallas getting substantial work for long in the event that Walker missed time, right? I think Charbonnet would be able to consolidate most of that. So he's interesting to me in that aspect. And then just a quick touch on the Ravens backfield. I mean, Gus Edwards is now injured. Justice Hill is injured. We're just going to roll out like Melvin Gordon and Kenyon Drake and whatever. Oh man, that team cannot catch a break with injuries. How has your opinion changed on which of these running backs you want in the Baltimore backfield? Is it just a stay away for you? How are you playing this?
It has become like a sort of like frustrating backfield, where the overall offense hasn't been good enough to like really prop up production, and then you have the rushing quarterback, so he can obviously steal touchdowns, and then what's his name, Zay Flowers, he gets a ton of like what could have been running back targets. Definitely not. It doesn't seem to be a fantasy rich environment for running backs. And probably, honestly, probably some of that is that they're not trotting out world beaters. I think when Justice Hill comes back, he's still the running back to own, but would be very cost conscious on Justice. I think you're probably is the 12th round or 12th round is like I think I might be actually too high there or too early there is like the most I'm paying. Doesn't feel like a good backfield to target for sure.
Yeah, I think I did 2 resurrection drafts today just to kind of like dip my toes in the water and see the initial ADPs. And he is currently unlisted with no ADP. So it's really just you're at the mercy of your room. You're trying to play a guessing game of when people are going to take him. He went too early in both rooms, in my opinion. I think someone grabbed him in like the 8th in one of the rooms and the 10th in the other. And
starting running back price.
Yeah, I was good off that. There is a pretty steep running back gets disgusting rather quick after like the 12th, 13th round in resurrection, just because we've a lot of the 0 RB targets, like the thesis has already played itself out. You know, a bunch of them already hit, and the ones that didn't hit, they got like super mush. So
Right.
it's pretty binary on those 0 RB targets. It does kind of make it a little harder, pushing that RB pick all the way to the end.
The range of uncertainty on lots of backfields got a lot thinner.
Yeah,
which makes it harder.
100%.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one thing on Zach Charbonnet, it does feel like the coaching staff, they really like Kenneth Walker. Really like Kenneth Walker. So the fact that they're playing Charbonnet even this much is probably a solid sign for him, especially if you're playing for like a contingent value where Walker may not, where Walker isn't available to, like, if he's injured.
Yeah, I definitely interested in Charbonnet because of that, because they certainly like Walker.
So let's move on to the expected points part of the chart. And so we've got on the vertical axis we've got receiving expected points, and on the horizontal axis we've got rushing expected points. And then you can see these sort of dotted red lines that sort of mark the different sections. So it starts off as 0 to 5 expected points, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20. And one thing that we should note that may have not been clear last week was that we split this up into two different charts, into an evens and odds, and that may not seem intuitive, but the reason for it is we want to make sure that the charts are not clustered. We want you to be able to see the players on the charts, and by splitting them out that way, that was the best way to achieve that.
Excellent chart explanation. Much of the same on this chart from the past 2 weeks. Couple big differences. I mean, Raheem Mostert is going way over fantasy points expected per game now. I mean, he's just been absolutely smashing. He managed to break himself into that 15 to 20 expected fantasy points tier, among the likes of Christian McCaffrey, Kenneth Walker, Alexander Madison. So Mostert is someone that's really interesting for his immediate term production. Although on the next chart, we will see his backfield mate who erupted this week, and we'll talk a little bit more about the implications to that backfield as a whole. Other things worth pointing out. I mean, there's just that big kind of clump of guys in that 10 to 15 fantasy point range where to me, I kind of look at that range as like, these are the last running backs I'm really wanting to target. If you look at everyone below that, you're looking at like Latavius Murray, Khalil Herbert, Dalvin Cook, Eli Mitchell, Devin Singletary, Deonta Foreman, not guys I'm super excited about. And so that 10 to 15 band contains the guys where I'm like, let me throw a bunch of these on my roster, at good costs. There's a couple though that we're going to see continue to climb. Like, for example, I wouldn't expect DeAndre Swift to hang out here very long. I think that we'll probably see him get a little more work. He's just been so efficient with it, and the Eagles seem to they're picking up what he's putting down. I think they're pretty happy with what he's doing. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him crest into that 15 to 20 range and be in there with guys like Mostert, Kenneth Walker, McCaffrey.
Yeah, that makes sense. And one thing that this chart can be useful for is that you see Khalil Herbert, he's getting 37% of between rush attempts and routes, and on other teams, obviously that's not great. On other teams that would be more usable. But you can see here he's sort of hanging out in the 9 expected points range, which absolutely fine if you're getting cheap Khalil Herbert. But the kind of potential downside case for the Bears backfield, where the offense isn't very good and it's split up too many different ways. And definitely feels like it's playing out there. But I do think like that's also a backfield where if you get an injury and it sort of consolidates a bit, that could be that could get very interesting, especially if the Bears were to turn it around.
I'm the most interested in Roschon in that backfield. I don't think I don't think that Herbert does so much more than him as a runner, where he's gonna get kept off the field because they just love Herbert over him. And I think he adds a lot more in the passing game. The problem is this Bears team is really bad. At least so far, they look like an offense you don't want to touch the 10-foot pole. And Justin Fields doesn't look like he can deliver the ball accurately to anyone. So that the receiving expected points that Roschon is getting, I wonder how much we can actually expect him to realize those, if those are, especially if he's getting targets that are farther downfield. Are they really going to be something he can convert, because are they even catchable? But I think as far as the way to play this backfield, you want to play it through Roschon because the ceiling is probably the highest there. And you end up with that archetype of back where he should be able to be involved regardless of game script, where Khalil Herbert can definitely get game scripted out. So I prefer Roschon to Herbert. And I believe I would be taking Roschon over Herbert right now in Resurrection.
Okay. That sounds very fair. And I'm guessing that is a large function of you're not going to take Herbert very high either.
Correct.
You're not going to take either of them very high. Like I know the current ADP it's going to update. But current ADP has Herbert 94, like obviously way too high, and then Roschon's hanging around 150.
The way, sorry, go ahead.
I'm thinking that you should probably push Roschon up a good amount. So that's in the 150. That's like the 13th round. And so probably push him up to like, I don't know, the 12th, 11th. That's not actually that good amount. And then Herbert just a little bit behind them. But I think I probably would expect drafters to take Herbert over Roschon, which I hope they do.
Yeah. I was just gonna say that I kind of anticipate that range of the draft from like the 12th through 14th round has a bunch of people in it right now that should move. The ADPs are really inefficient in that kind of range of the draft. So I bet you're going to get a bunch of these like Herbert, Mitchell, Singletary, Dalvin Cook, all these guys. I bet that's where a bunch of them land, because that, to me, that feels like kind of a vacuum or an empty space in the draft where there's guys in that range that'll move up a lot and there's guys in that range that'll move down a lot. And I think that's going to be just like the empty void where all these guys settle. That's just my read on it. One that I wanted to bring up, if you are drafting Resurrection, one that's really interesting. Saquon is, allegedly had a high ankle sprain, but it's the rumor mill is like, oh no, he's fine. He's week to week. Let's just sprinkle a little Matt Breida in there. He's going undrafted. That's, pre NFL season, I wasn't very excited about a handcuff in that backfield, but now that we have a much higher probability of realizing the contingent value in that backfield. And I don't think Breida is going to be a world beater or anything. I think
Saquon actually, he said that he has a high ankle sprain.
Okay. But yeah, I'm looking at like, now I have a way higher probability of realizing this. And so let me just take some dart throws on Breida. Gosh, I can't remember, the name is escaping me, for the other back there that got more of a little more pass catching work in their most recent game.
I'm drawing a blank as well.
They're probably both fine dart throws. I think you prefer Breida because he does look to be working ahead of whoever
Gary
back. Brightwell.
Brightwell.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Breida over Brightwell, but like if you think that the Giants are going to get a lot better and that offense is one that you want to target, I would mix in both Breida and Brightwell then. For someone where you're just like, I would like an 18th round running back that has the ability to potentially get work, I would just be sprinkling Breida. I think Brightwell is just more if you're like bullish on that offense and trying to diversify your bets there.
That makes sense for sure. And I think Rhamondre is at a really interesting point of this chart where he's at 15 expected points per game, and obviously that's a starting running back role, but the efficiency has just not been there. I think that's somewhat interesting in that running back efficiency it can be super volatile. And we do have a decent track record that Rhamondre is good, and then you have this thing as well where the offense hasn't played that well either. So maybe that's a part of the function of the underperformance. But
not to. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Not to zoom in to too small of a sample, but just from watching the game this week, Rhamondre didn't look great. To me, I'm not a ball knower, so take that with a grain of salt. But there was a play where he was wide open and had nothing but green grass ahead of him, wide open in the flat, and he gets hit in the numbers with the pass and just drops it, just flat drops it. I know the weather wasn't great, but it was like, dude, come on, that's like must catch. There was another route that he ran where. It didn't look like he was. I don't know. He didn't look like he was ready for the ball or like aware that he was going to be targeted.
You think he's not? His head isn't in the game.
I don't want to say that. That feels like
I know you don't want to say that, but it's just something. I think it's something that's like super hard to call. Obviously we want to be on the watch out for him to just play really badly all year, but like unless we've heard something where like he's gained weight or like the coaches like they don't like him, it does feel like let's say Rhamondre falls into like the 5th round or something like that, or like something like that. So it does seem like a really interesting bet to make.
Yeah, in the 5th, it starts to be interesting. I would need to be on the clock faced with the other decisions there in the 5th because, Swift's ADP right now is silly. It won't stay, but it's like 80. You're never taking Rhamondre over Swift, right?
No.
Yeah. What about Mixon?
So I probably would take Rhamondre over Mixon. Yeah,
interesting. I think I probably go Mixon over Rhamondre, just because they're giving Zeke a lot of opportunity, like a lot, like more than he probably should get, but they're giving him a lot. So and Mixon is like not receiving that kind of competition for touches. So for me, I'm just going to take the guy who seems like he's going to carve out a larger piece of the pie.
Yeah, I mean that sounds totally fair. I just have a block in my brain of like, but I just find it so hard to believe that they will continue to do that with Zeke. But that is like when one running back is getting considerably more competition for touches, and then maybe it is easier to believe the Bengals offense turn around. I'm a bit skeptical of that, but I totally see that.
If you have anyone else on this chart, go ahead and
yeah, let's move on. So same chart, and I assume this is the odds.
Yep. And just as we anticipated, the running backs with the highest amount of expected fantasy points per week: Austin Eckler, Kyren Williams, and Zach Moss hot on the heels.
Yeah, that super surprising. And one thing that does strike me here is that when is enough with Josh Jacobs?
I was gonna bring up the same thing. He's withering in, he's getting the opportunity and he's withering. And I don't know. This week could be a get right spot. Gets the Chargers right. Chargers have not been good against the run probably by design as well. But I mean, if Josh Jacobs, and I hate when people do that. If this guy doesn't produce this week, he's done. Like that's
right.
A little silly. But if Josh Jacobs doesn't produce this week against the Chargers and gets a similar workload, you've got to start to be concerned about the ceiling outcomes for him. And I don't know exactly what it is that's causing him to be less efficient this season. But so far through this small sample, it hasn't looked great.
Yeah. And then the fact that he did have just a 1 year of excellent good efficiency, is definitely concerning. And then sometimes when I see a player who's been particularly inefficient, I like to look at the yardage and the touchdown stuff. So he's on the touchdown for all 3 weeks. He's minus 14 expected points or points over expected just from touchdowns. And so that obviously you have to take that with a grain of salt because that's super volatile. But on the yardage point, he's minus 8 over expected. So you're talking about, let's say 30 or so, 20, 25, 27 yardage under expected. And so like it's just like a broad scale inefficiency. And when I'm already a little skeptical, I anyway tend to be a little bit quicker to like, like this feels like very dead zoney.
Yeah, I agree. He feels very dead zoney to me. The man of the week that we can't leave this chart without talking about is Devon Achane, largest circle on the chart, just running hotter than the sun on fantasy points over expectation. Breaking off long runs for touchdowns. That short touchdown, his first touchdown that he got, where he was working through traffic inside, they were like right around the 10 when he got it, but he's working through traffic. I did not think he was scoring a touchdown on that play. To me, I was like, okay, he's going to get hit around the 5 and he'll go down right at the goal line. But he just managed to get right in there. That was awesome. Oh, maybe that was the second touchdown he scored. I think the first one was that no-look shovel pass. Is that right? Or was that there were so many touchdowns in that game. It's hard to keep them straight.
4 touchdowns. Hard to keep track of them all. But the point you're making is that he looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And when a rookie comes out in his first kind of like big game where he has a big role and he looks that good, very, very encouraging. And so I've been sort of like humming and hawing on Achane. So with Achane, with him looking so good, but then on the other hand, other running backs being healthy next week, Ahmed, Jeff Wilson comes back soon. How are you balancing that? Do you think like the coaching staff are just going to be like, oh well, this guy is clearly fantastic, or do you think they'll still really like the guys that they liked, and that might push them a bit?
I'm trying to remember where I heard this so I properly attribute credit, but I believe it was on Stealing Bananas. I want to say that Gretsch said, Achane he's out of the bag. The cat's out of the bag on it.
Right, toothpaste out of the tube.
Yeah, you cannot. You can't go back and just pretend that you didn't see this crazy efficiency. He looked like everything you want as a coach. So I'd be very surprised for him to not have. Maybe his workload isn't as large as it was, this last week going forward. I'd be pretty surprised though. They're going to have trouble keeping off the field. And then we got a good question in the chat from Aaron here. If you had to choose between one running back between Achane or Gainwell season long, who would it be? I'll let you answer this one first, Rico.
Yeah, it's Achane all day long, all day long. Obviously, they started off at different places in week 1, but if you give me 2 running backs who honestly have at least for the next couple of weeks have similar expectations for snap percentage, but one of them looks incredible, and then the other one is clearly being outperformed. I want the one who looks incredible.
Yeah. Yep. Well said. It's a windmill slam dunk Achane over Gainwell for me.
Yeah. No question about it. And then obviously, he's sort of like his ADP. Like, I'm just trying to think through his ADP now. Like, he's what you wanted Gibbs to be, right? Jahmyr Gibbs.
I think it's a little early to say, just because we only have the 1 week of the workload being what you'd want. Because like putting him up to like, oh, he's what we wanted Gibbs to be. I mean, what we want.
I know that's suggesting that he should be in the 4th round. I don't know if I want to suggest that, but I'm just trying to like frame my thinking in terms of like upside.
Yeah, I mean the upside is that he consolidates the majority of. I always think they're going to be a backfield, but the upside is he consolidates the majority of the best offense in the league for the eventual Super Bowl winning Miami Dolphins, and he's live for 15 touchdowns. Like So the upside is sky freaking high. Is it too hot of a take to say that the upside is like top 5 RB?
No, I don't think so. Like if you're saying that if he has like this possibility to be like, let's say a 55% snap share guy, and he's this player who Mike McDaniels, he just can't wait to scheme up all these different crazy ways to get him in space. He runs a 4-3 and he's getting all these long touchdowns and crazy plays. Like that totally feels like a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, he just seems like a perfect fit for the offense. Very, very bullish on him going forward. The other guy who I feel a little more bullish on going forward after this week is James Cook. I mean, you still have the goal line carry concerns where he's losing goal line work to Latavius Murray. I refuse to believe that by the most important weeks, week 15, 16, 17, Latavius Murray is still getting goal line carries. There's no way. I refuse to believe 34-year-old Latavius Murray is stealing goal line work in week 17 of the year of our Lord 2023. Do I have take lock? Am I like Latavius Murray anti-take locked, or what's going on here?
I mean, he's clearly giving us the evidence that like, hey, they like this guy on the goal line, and they're giving him the work. But I think as like, if you're trying to test the fragility or like how can our new expectations be fragile? Like that definitely feels like one where yes, Latavius Murray being the goal line back for as long as for the rest of the year, probably it feels like probably a decent percentage likelihood, but it's also so fragile where there's so many things that can happen where he can get injured or he messes up. He has a big fumble and he messes some stuff up, and then like they don't have any attachment to him. That's sort of like I'm trying to talk through it myself. Like I think it probably is like I think it's probably a 50-50 thing. Where But I do think what is interesting is even with Latavius Murray taking goal line stuff, James Cook, he still had like half an expected touchdown in week 2 and 3. So like it's not like he's not getting any goal line stuff. You wish it was a bit more.
Yeah, I just think that he's looked good enough, and if he continues to play well, then there's a chance of him being able to win a little bit more of that work.
Mhm.
I don't think they really want him for the super, we're, first and goal on the 1. Like, are we really putting James Cook in there? Or are we just going to ram it up the middle with Latavius? But like from the stuff that's just a couple yards out, like 3 yards out, 4 yards out, 5 yards out, I feel like he's very live to get those opportunities, which he's definitely good enough to score.
Yeah,
if
I agree.
Situations.
And the fact that he's already getting something, it makes it much easier to believe that like he can just build that up just a little bit more.
That's one where I'm just like kind of praying that the market overreacts to him not getting goal line stuff, and he slides back to what his early ADP looked like. But we'll see how the market plays that.
Makes sense for sure. I think Breece Hall still being back here, obviously as they ramp him up, and as Zach Wilson sort of like impairs the offense. I'm a little sad to see him still down here, especially when we saw that what's his name, Javonte seems to be running a little bit ahead of him in terms of expected points. Oh well, he's right here. So that is a bit disappointing for Breece Hall. Are we adjusting there or?
I think he's still not getting the amount of snaps that you think that he can get to. He did see more snaps this week. I believe he was up around 50%. I don't have it right in front of me. But I would anticipate his role to continue to grow because Cook has looked terrible. They don't have anyone else of consequence there that is going to push him for work. So I really just think it's, Breece and Cook. And right now, Michael Carter is out there when they're like, just a warm body, anybody, Michael Carter, take some snaps, pal. So I think Breece can he can win all those snaps, and he can steal some of the snaps that Dalvin's getting right now. The big question for me that defines where you take Breece Hall, what your expectation is for him, is how many more weeks does Zach Wilson play quarterback for the Jets?
Yeah. And let's say they come out tomorrow, and it looks like they just signed Trevor Siemian. If they switch to Trevor Siemian, how much does that impact your outlook for Breece Hall?
It's probably like situation neutral-ish. I don't think it's a huge improvement over Zach Wilson, but yeah, I mean the types of moves that would make me reassess and say now I think the probability of the true bull case for Breece is much more likely to be realized would be they trade for Jacoby Brissett, or Ryan Fitzpatrick comes out of retirement, or I mean shit, even like Joe Flacco would be enough where I'm like, all right, Breece is back on the menu. I think that he is talented enough that it just won't matter to an extent. Like he will always have the explosive play in his bag. It's just the frequency that he can break explosive plays at is lower if the offense as a whole, like if the only thing you have to worry about is Breece, then it's much harder to get those explosive plays at a higher frequency. And also he doesn't get to realize as much touchdown equity if the offense is just bad and not moving the ball and sustaining drives and getting into the red zone. So it's pretty important. I'm operating under the assumption that the Jets are in to win this season. I think they firmly, whether this is based in reality or not, I think they're going to delude themselves into thinking Aaron Rodgers will be able to make it back for a playoff run. All we have to do is limp into the playoffs. Like basically the strategy for every Breece Hall drafter in best ball season, like Breece is going to be at full strength in the most important weeks. All I have to do is limp into the playoffs with Breece Hall, right? I think the Jets are that same way. So I feel like the odds have to be pretty strong that they bring in a quarterback to replace Zach Wilson before too long here.
Yeah, I see that where like the coaching staff gets frustrated enough that they're like, okay, we gotta make a trade here, or we gotta like make a move. I think the other thing that's interesting about Breece, because I was just thinking about it while you were talking, is that he did actually do everything that he did last year was in a or not everything, but almost everything he did last year was in a Zach Wilson operated offense. And so if he did if he got back when he gets back to 100%, like we can probably use last year's kind of like games as somewhat of a framework to think about it, where the Jets, they want to hide their quarterback. Maybe less so if it's not Zach Wilson, but they want to hide their quarterback. And how do you do that? You find creative ways to get Breece Hall the ball. And I think that's like an important sort of like we're not seeing that yet because he is ramping up, but I think that's an important part of the story of like when he does get close to 100% and they are giving him much more work, that maybe he can just be efficient enough that you get something there even with per quarterback play. So I think honestly, I haven't told myself that story. I don't think I'm moving him down all that much, just because the first three, like let's say the first 3 weeks of the season, Breece Hall has been on the field 39% of the time, and then in week 3 that was 49% of the time. So he is being ramped back up, and it probably is actually pretty close to the trajectory that would have been reasonable to believe before the year. So I think I'm starting to feel like, you know, I when I first saw him on the chart here, I was kind of discouraged, but thinking through it, I think I'm actually not moving. I'm not moving that much.
No, yeah, to me it's Breece Hall business as usual. We're still hoping for it to play out in the way that we think that it can. The biggest concern for me, if it is a Zach Wilson offense the whole season, is it's going to be much harder to realize his upside in the receiving game, because he's an elite receiver. You know, like he's up there with Christian McCaffrey as far as how good he is in the passing game. And so if you have like, oh my God, I'm so sad to not see Aaron Rodgers get to use him in the passing game, because that to me felt like such a good match. Like the type of quarterback that would be able to truly take advantage of his running back having that type of skill set. Oh, it's such a bummer. All right, we need to move to the next chart before I get too sad here.
One thing, just because I do want to make sure we're taking questions. Penny, where would you take Penny? And so where do you take the fourth string running back?
Yeah, same place I take Boston Scott.
Yeah, feels really bad. Much regret. But yeah, he's an 18th round dart throw if you so wish.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's move on. And so we're onto the tight end chart. And so this is in the chart part is what we're really focusing on is the route percentage, and that's that green color. And then just because we want to see how often they're still on the field for passing plays, we have pass blocking there in that kind of like salmon pink color. And then obviously you don't want them just running routes. You want them getting heavily targeted as well. So we've got targets per route run here, and then you want targets down the field. So we've got A-Dot here as well.
Yeah, we can have a funeral for our boy Smythe this week, because this was the week where if you're gonna, again, not to do that thing where it's like, oh, he didn't produce this week, he's totally buried, but like he's not anyone that I want to like play in season long, or like the only time I'm throwing Smythe out there is in like DFS when he's stone min and I'm correlating him with Tua. I'm not super excited to take him in resurrection drafts. But man, who I am super excited to take, who unfortunately I was greedy today in my 2 drafts that I did, and I tried to push him.
Just on Smythe, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
He had just a 25% root share in week 3.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't clarify there why we were burying him.
So we were super happy when he was at the top of this chart. His talent is not something that we're particularly excited about, but like a tight end who's running every route, very excited. But if he's being dropped, unless there's some injury that we don't know about, like that just completely unplayable. I'm a bit hesitant to cut just because maybe there's an injury announcement and he's fine or something like that. But very, very close to cuttable as well, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Not super excited about him. Who I was getting to that I am super excited about though is Sam LaPorta, who looks to be, I don't even think it's a hot take to say Sam LaPorta's live for tight end 1 this season. I know that probably sounds like a hot take, but like the highest scoring tight end overall in the season is in his range of outcomes. He's not the favorite for it. I'd still take Kelsey over him for that, but squarely in his range. He looks awesome. He's a rookie. He's extremely highly involved. His 27% targets per route run. His A-Dot has been increasing week over week. So that's like all systems are go. Get on the LaPorta rocket ship. His ADP is going to get crazy. He should, in resurrection drafts, he probably should be like, this is going to sound nuts, he should be like in the 5th round or the 4th round.
Yeah, I agree. He is like, he's an elite tight end for fantasy. He's got an elite tight end role. Clearly has good talent too. So wheels up. I mean, you almost want to like just close your eyes and squint and call him TJ Hawkinson.
I was gonna say when I was drafting today, I got to the point in the draft where I thought TJ Hawkinson was a good player to consider. There were a couple running backs on the board I liked there as well. And LaPorta's ADP is way later, but I was like, I think I should technically, if I was just drafting purely off rank and not caring about when the market was going to take a guy, I should take LaPorta here over everyone else that I'm considering. And I waited and tried to push it and got greedy and didn't end up getting him. But I think he goes before Hawkinson in my, like, right before Hawkinson.
That is super interesting. So like that's basically a sort of like what is efficient? What would efficient ADP be?
Yeah.
And so what should we project ADP to finish at by the time the contest closes?
I would say in the range he could finish as early as the end of round 3, the 3-4 turn. That happens when he continues to have crazy games and he's just cooking and he looks great. I think
clear priority target. In the early going in resurrection.
100%. Get absolutely as much LaPorta as you can. Like I think that if you have 100% LaPorta for a while, you're playing optimally.
Very, very fair. And then I see every year around this time, I see a post about how gross tight end is. They show us, hey, this guy caught 3 touchdowns, Donald Parham, and he's tight end 6, and so it is that is sort of like important context, I think, to think through some of these guys where you're just looking for roots and you're hoping that that they can get a decent target share, but this is sort of settling. Other than the early surprises that we got, this is sort of settling, sort of what we expected. The only one that I'm still a bit surprised at, I'm still a bit surprised to see Darren Waller down so low here, where he does have 21% target per run, but at that like 65-ish Dawson Knox, Roschon Johnson route share, I think that's obviously a clear disappointment.
Yeah, I think it's just he's old, and so they're trying to limit his reps. That might, to me, I'm like starting to be a little bit more excited about getting some Darren Waller on my teams, and it's not because you're correct in your assessment that like, man, this is not exciting. We wanted more from this. But I think that the market probably overcorrects on this. And this seems like the kind of player where like he's pretty clearly the preferred target for Daniel Jones. If that offense has good games, I can really see him earning a lot of targets. And I'm just wanting him for cheap is all. I want him for cheap. If he's going expensive still, like I'm fully out. But
right.
I could see him falling, and then I'm going to end up with some Darren Waller.
That makes sense. And so I guess the natural question then is, where are you at? Where's the point where you're like, okay, I think I have to take Darren Waller here?
There's right now the ADP is so murky with the market. The way it feels to me is there should be a big old chunk of wide receivers that are going to move up from that like 8th round range into like the 7th round. And I think the 8th round is going to end up like right around 8th, 9th. And I've only done 2 drafts. So like, don't hold me to this. These might be some bad takes. I think like the 8th and 9th round is going to end up being kind of like another one of those vacuums that I mentioned where like it's devoid of players that people actually think belong there. And it's going to clear out and leave room for guys. And so you'll end up with guys that fall there, whether or not their ADP belongs there efficiently. It's just like there's a void here, and we have to draft someone here. And so I think that Waller will go there most likely. If I were going to pull out my crystal ball and tell you exactly what his ADP does over this tournament, it will fall a little bit at the beginning, especially if he has another poor production game. It will fall, even further into like the, early mid, like 110, 120. I could see him even going in like the 130s if he has a really bad game. And then I bet you he climbs back up and settles around like the low 90s or so. That's kind of what I see.
Sounds like, would you take Waller over Kyle Pitts?
Damn, that hurts. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
That's such a sad, yeah. What about Evan Ingram?
I probably take Waller over Evan Ingram. That's another. I think it's pick your poison on Pitts, Waller, Evan Ingram. I think it's that one's honestly just like probably just let the correlation of your team decide. Tours?
So you think those 3 are in the same tier, basically?
Yeah, I think they're right around each other. Does that sound too crazy to you?
No, I think that sounds pretty fair. Where they all have like pretty significant downside risk. Like we already noted their concern with with the Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville offense. Kyle Pitts. Everybody's like keenly aware of the downside risk there, and then And then Darren Waller, he has the kind of like soft tissue injuries. Giants aren't very good, but is Darren Waller. I think I'd still prefer Kyle Pitts out of that bunch, but totally, I think that's totally reasonable and sort of rational way to look at it.
With a player like Kyle Pitts, who's burned so much of the market so vividly, and he's starting to do it again. You know, it's not like you haven't gotten a good game from him yet. To me, that's the kind of player where you try to play really exploitative on it. And I think that's a player where you often push it. You need to, if you're going to draft a lot of resurrection or draft a lot of these, DraftKings tournaments where they roll out a new one every week, I think you need to get a sense over a couple drafts of how late you can push Kyle Pitts. And then this would be more if you're taking like a volume approach. And then once you kind of know, like, he doesn't usually make it past 130. Like, I've seen him go to 130, but he doesn't usually make it past 130. Then you start nailing it right around that rate. Like, okay, if he's ever past 125, I go crazy here and I just click him every time.
I have a saying for myself where just let sliders slide. Let them slide. Don't be the hero. Let them slide and let the room hand you the value. Don't get in the way. Which is sounds like pretty much what you're advocating. So just to wrap up this chart here, I don't see anything super surprising here. We have some sort of play, Colin Granson, Jonnu Smith, Julian Hill, Hayden Hurst. Like there's some players here where they're playing snaps, they're getting some routes, but not I guess not super excited to play. Like it's tight end remains pretty gross.
Yep. Oh, just as a this won't reflect super clearly on this chart since it's all 3 weeks combined, but Zach Ertz finally had like a normal week where he had like 2 targets instead of his usual like double-digit targets. So that is looking like, don't worry, Zach Ertz isn't going to bury you with double-digit targets every single week.
I can finally breathe a sigh of relief. And he only had 64% route share in week 3 as well, which is a bit interesting too.
Didn't need him. They were kicking the shit out of the Cowboys.
Didn't need Zach Ertz, and neither do I. So just gonna I don't think that there's anything particularly new on the tight end chart. Is there anything that you want to touch on here?
Ferguson got more targets this week even. I think I want to say that his route share went up just a tiny bit this week. He's the only one on this whole chart that like looks interesting, right? He's got 27% targets per route run. Most of these guys you're not going to consider because they're just not on the field enough. But that's the only one where I'm like, that's a little interesting. Oh, you know what? I lied. There's one more. It's Cole Turner. He's down near the bottom because Logan Thomas was healthy for the first couple weeks. But I was drafting quite a bit of Cole Turner near the end of draft season because I already had a ton of Logan Thomas. And I just wasn't so certain that Logan Thomas would stay healthy for the whole season. And this is one of those things where it's just like, how is it going to play out to be this simple? Like, how is it this obvious? But there was the rumblings in the offseason that Washington is going to run, the tight end's going to get the Travis Kelce role. The Travis Kelce role. It's Eric Bienemy. He only knows how to use the tight end as an elite role. And I was like, I dismissed it a little bit, but I still liked the tight ends there because they were free and I liked Sam Howell. But I kind of think the tight end role is pretty valuable in that offense. So there you go. That's your 18th round dart throw. Cole Turner. And then, on the previous chart, Hunter Henry's still going too cheap in resurrection. I'm sure he'll climb, but on this
what's interesting about Cole Turner is, so he got 11 targets and 91 air yards, but he still only ran 56% route share. So he was 29%, and this is week 3. in week 3, even with Logan Thomas out. So he's 29% targets per run. And so that does tell me that not only, like, obviously he did, even in that case, he didn't consolidate to a true degree the routes at tight end, but it's clearly a heavily targeted role in that offense. So very, very interested in tight end in Washington.
Yep.
So now we move to the wide receiver part of the chart, and we have to acknowledge that Davante Adams is him.
Yeah, Davante Adams. I mean, undraftable, right? Like the Raiders are going to be so bad, and he can't. He'll never be able to produce. Just kidding. Davante Adams is among the best receivers in the league. The guys who are better than him, you can count on one hand. Like he's elite. I mean, this feels like a silly, like I don't even know why we're wasting time comparing the two, but like the only guy that does stuff that Davante Adams does, like Davante Adams does some Justin Jefferson looking stuff, and Justin Jefferson does some Davante Adams looking stuff. Like that play where Davante just like elevated and went up over the defender and like came down on his back. It's like, I've seen a guy do that, and his name is Justin Jefferson. Like, of course, Davante's been doing this a long time. But man, those are some elite receivers. I mean, Keenan Allen also, like Keenan Allen just showing that he can answer the call, man. When there is no one else that they want to throw the ball to, Keenan says, give me all of it. And I think this may be the year of Keenan Allen, just with the way that things seem to be playing out for this Chargers offense with the Mike Williams injury. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Eckler just be in and out this season. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him not play a ton of games. Yeah, that makes sense for sure. Where he's just the only true star on the offense. And the one thing I'm curious to get your take on is I see CeeDee Lamb here with only 54% of a weighted targets per out run. So is he not getting targeted? Is it just? So I subjected myself to the pain of watching every snap of that Cowboys game, and it was really gross. Honestly, like, you want to throw out the tape game. That looked like a throw out the tape game. It was a trap game. They looked like they didn't show up to play. What ended up happening on offense a lot was Gallup got more involved. Gallup finally saw some targets, and also Ferguson, as I previously mentioned, Ferguson saw more targets. I honestly, I can't really give you much reason as to why. I'm going to call it more noise than signal, but yeah, it wasn't a good sign to see the Cowboys get dog walked by the Cardinals.
So yeah, I think I agree on the CD stuff. I saw Des Bryant on Twitter saying, "I'm dead serious about this. I want the Cowboys to hire me as an assistant, and I want to create ways to get him open near the end zone because he's their best player, or like among their best players." And I'd be surprised if we didn't get like some squeaky wheel weeks pretty soon from Lamb. After they lose and they didn't use him properly. That seems pretty likely to me.
The thing that I'm noticing in this Mike McCarthy calling the plays offense is Mike McCarthy is not tremendously bad at play calling, as everyone would have us believe, but he's also not very good. And he often does, if he's getting to the right answer, or like he's doing what would be correct, he's going to go too far in the direction of what's correct, right? So like, oh, CeeDee Lamb needs more targets. 25 sounds reasonable. Like, let's throw him the ball 25 times. Or like, oh, Tony Pollard's our most efficient back. Let's give him all the work. It's like, no. You need to mix in Rico Dowdle just a little bit. Or like, oh, we're in, really favorable down and distance situations. Like, we should run the ball more. It's like, no, dude, take advantage and pass a little bit. So there's just stuff where it seems like I'm not going to.
You're expecting an overcorrection.
Yeah, he seems like the prime example of a coach overcorrecting. And so I'm going to make like a note to myself, like pay attention to Cowboys games, see what happens week to week, and see if that overcorrection trend holds on different aspects, and try to take advantage of that for DFS if that's something where there's a little bit of signal to that, because I think that he might be a little bit more predictable in his tendencies as a play caller, just from what I'm seeing.
That makes sense for sure. And also interesting here is Adam Thielen. Very high route share for an older player, which is interesting. But very clearly in the kind of like, we don't, if there was a sell high section of the chart, it would be the guys getting lots of points, but low weighted targets per route run. And given that those feel like definitely, I'm not breaking any news here, but definitely feels like a pretty comfortable quote unquote sell high.
Yeah. The only other guys that I think are worth mentioning on this chart, because there weren't a ton of crazy movers here. Other than the guys that put up some monster weeks like Davante and Keenan, but Chris Godwin here, it's starting to look like Baker only has eyes for Mike Evans. And I don't know, again, it's only 3 weeks, could be small sample size, but the way Baker seems to like to play is he really likes chucking it up and letting someone make a play. And Mike Evans is pretty good at that. So I kind of feel like Mike Evans is going to be the receiver you want to own in this offense. But yeah, that was the only other noteworthy receiver I had on this chart.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure. And then I do notice DJ Moore is in a very kind of like disappointing part where he's not even getting it, even with how bad the offense has been. He's not even like really consolidating down the field throws. Very disappointing. I guess he did get 6. He has been getting 6 targets week 2 and week 3, which isn't awful. 130 air yards week 3. That's pretty good. But yeah, really weird usage there. And hopefully if the Bears do manage to turn around, better DJ Moore usage is part of the story. But definitely feels bad to have done that. You remember that 4-5 turn thing where people were clicking Fields and DJ Moore seems like a bad.
Yeah, I'd say that's aging poorly. DJ Moore feels like one of those prime candidates for what you talked about of let fallers fall. That's one where we want to see how low can you go, baby.
Yeah, I agree. Very fair.
Sorry, last one before we go to the next chart. Cortland Sutton, wasn't he didn't perform great, but they sure wanted to get him involved. All the rumblings before the season of Sean Payton's making Cortland Sutton watch old Michael Thomas film. Oh, he's gonna have the Michael Thomas role. He kind of looks like he might have the Michael Thomas role. He is super involved, man. I'm a little uncertain of how I want to play this Denver offense. I think that the market is also, just from what I saw in the 2 drafts that I did. And so I kind of think that all of the receivers might be a buy at where they'll end up going. Mims was going like crazy early in the drafts that I did, but I don't know where he settles. But to me, it seems like they might all be mispriced, like an efficient price. Say Cortland Sutton role stays about where it is. Like he probably is a 7th rounder or a 6th rounder, and he's more going in like the 8th right now. So
Yeah, very. So I guess only thing I'm seeing here is that so he had a 26%. So just adjusting. Obviously, we're looking at weighted targets per out run in this chart, which weights high A dot throws more heavily than low A dot. But just looking at normal unadjusted targets per out run, so he did have 26% in week 3, but then it was 17% in week 2, 14% in week 1. I do wonder if maybe we saw just like a 1-game high for him, or like obviously him having these types of games in his range, and you're suggesting that like he should go in the 7th round, like very, very fair, but just to temper expectations a little bit, this may have been kind of like a high-end game for him, and his normal range is maybe closer to somewhere between 15 and 20%.
That's very reasonable.
So yeah, let's move on to our sort of like they're starters, but they're not on the field in every snap chart. So we touched on Mike Evans, Tyreek Hill, as always, is the chart breaker. Mike Williams, I know we're leaving Mike Williams in this chart just to kind of send him off.
He was doing great, man. It was going to be a great season for Mike Williams. It looked like just the way that he was being deployed in that offense was better than previous years. Very unfortunate to see him tear his ACL. That guy has had really unfortunate injury luck. But maybe we can consider Nico Collins the new Mike Williams, kind of a bigger bodied guy. Similar area of the chart here. Nico had been doing a lot with Stroud, being willing to throw it up there. Tank Dell did kind of steal Nico's thunder a little bit this week, but man, the more I think about that Houston offense, I'm kind of like I should just have a lot of pieces of it, other than all the pieces not named Dalton Schultz, right? Like I should have all of them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, if the market is going to be slow to react, and you've already said they're going to print milli makers.
Yeah,
definitely feels like if the market is slow to react, very, very stackable offense. Definitely want pieces of it. Just one thing that I think is it's hard to see in this chart, but very notable is Calvin Ridley is really kind of sitting down here. I'm surprised to see him at only 80 to 85% roots, and then sitting behind a 60% weighted targets per run, where we're looking at 12 fantasy points per game. And then after week one, it felt like, okay, I faded Ridley. I am going to get crushed. And then he's at 14 in unadjusted targets per run, 14 and 15% the last 2 weeks. And that is that that does make me think that the kind of 2-3 turn, early 3rd round prices was extremely rich.
Oh yeah, I mean that was always like you were a slappy if you were. I even with week 1 in the books, where I'm like, oh god, am I going to get roasted here? But I still was pretty confident that regardless of the results, taking Ridley at 2-3 turn was very slappy behavior. I mean, like, if you're not paying attention to the change in draft capital that you're spending on a guy, not just like the raw number of picks that he moved up, because like, of course, Madison moved up more picks than Ridley, but the draft capital that Ridley increased by was the largest of any player. And what you're saying there, because I have a lot of Ridley teams where I got him in the 4th, like late 4th. I even think I have one where I got him in the 5th. That's super early, which is wild. But what you're saying when you take Ridley at the 2-3 turn and you run up against me in the playoffs when I've got late 4th Ridley or I've got early 5th Ridley, you're telling me that like you've got an extra player's worth. You've got like an extra, say, Kenneth Walker on your, like, I'm rolling up with a whole extra Kenneth Walker against you when you're doing your 2-3 Ridley against my 4-5 Ridley. Like, it's an enormous draft capital difference. So you're just like, you're betting a really thin parlay when it gets to be, you're basically, what you're saying is like, Ridley gets me to the playoffs, but like when the playoffs happen, I need Ridley to suck. Otherwise I'm toast, or I'm banking on fading like a 12 player parlay then, so
Right.
That's why I'm really hesitant. I'm extremely price sensitive on really, really aggressive risers, specifically from a draft capital perspective. But to build on your Ridley point, you do notice all of the Jags receivers are kind of right in there. Zay Jones missed some time. But you still have that Jags triangle there. You got Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones. They're all hanging around that same spot. And I wrote about this in my portfolio post-mortem review article over on Spike Week, where I said my prediction for how the Jags offense was going to go was all three wide receivers are going to produce usable weeks. They're going to be good spike week players, but that I didn't think any one of them was going to be like a consistent, gotta have it alpha on your team. And so if that's the way, if you truly believe that is the outcome that's going to happen, you should be playing it through the cheapest one at the highest weight, and then, tapering your weights down as they get more expensive. And I unfortunately didn't execute that perfectly. I ended up with more Christian Kirk than anyone, and then Zay Jones, and then Calvin Ridley. But I'm feeling okay about the way that I played it. It feels better than how it did after week 1.
Yeah. Makes sense. I would feel better about what's his name, Christian Kirk, than after week 1 as well. One kind of mover on this chart that I noticed, Treylon Burks is definitely starting to move in the right direction. Fantasy points not there yet, but given that we kind of cited that him returning from injury was part of why he had a slow start, and then him starting to pick up on the targets. He had 6 targets in week 3, and did not really perform with them, but definitely feeling better about Treylon Burks now. Go ahead.
I was gonna say this week he didn't end up with a ton of targets, right? But I do believe that he converted a touchdown. Am I misremembering?
Treylon Burks. So he had 6 targets.
Okay.
But converted that into just 5 yards. 5 yards for 30 yards. Sorry, I was right the first time. Just 5 yards.
5 yards and a touchdown, though, or just
no touchdown.
No touchdown.
Just 5 yards.
I'm attributing a phantom touchdown to Treylon Burks, apparently.
Welcome to stats chasing, folks.
Yeah, sorry. There's only so many stats I can hold in my head. But yeah, I mean, it's encouraging to see him move in this right direction. I am concerned about Tennessee as a whole, though.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed bag there. It's like, yay, the player is moving in the direction that we want, but oh boy, the offense is moving in the opposite direction. So we'll see how that shakes out.
Yeah, for sure, interesting to see Elijah Moore in the kind of like, even though his ADOT has been low, but his targets have come up. I think he got something like 9 targets this week.
He's like Zay Flowers on the Browns, right? Like they're manufacturing a lot of shorter stuff for him.
Yeah, that's a good way to ruin your appetite and Zay Flowers role, but on the Browns.
I mean, they even involved him in that double reverse pass back to him. That was a fun play design. It's like a double reverse, and then they set him up with like a screen. They were like, he had 3 blockers ahead of him. Went for like 10 yards. It was a whole lot of work for 10 yards, man, but I'm sure they had fun installing it.
Yeah. Fun play. But yeah, I think we've talked about this chart. Is there anybody else screaming at you?
Not really. No one that we haven't talked about in past weeks. I think everyone else is like kind of holding.
Okay. So yeah, this is kind of a more fun chart where it's the guys not playing that much, but you try and pick out the outperformers, such as Tank Dell, who still 65 to 70% root share. That seems pretty good for a rookie. That's trying to break onto the team, and now clearly has broken onto the team.
Yeah, I would anticipate this trend to continue for him. But before the season, there was a lot of news about the rapport between him and Stroud had specifically asked for him to get drafted, and now that he's on the field, he's making plays and earning targets. He seems like a strong rising candidate.
Yeah. And just looking at it here, so 46% route rate in week 1, then 82% and 84% in week 2. So he'll belong in the starter section pretty soon. He is in the starter section basically. So
he'll graduate next week.
Yeah. Then we have a bunch of players here that aren't that interesting, like Braxton Berrios, obviously part-time player, but getting targeted when he's out there. Sky Moore, better than it was before. Bateman, I'm officially worried about Bateman.
Me too. I'm pretty worried about Bateman. I just don't know if Bateman's happening, man. It's kind of a bummer. But it's like it's been a while, and he's not able to get on the field over I don't know, Nelson Aguilar. Like, I think
he did he did have he had an injury in this game. And then he was still he got up to 74% root share, but still only 3 targets. So and then he had the hamstring injury. So definitely somebody where if I'm getting them super late, I'm still gonna take them, but very happy to let a slide there.
Yeah, I agree on that one. The other one that the people may need to know, what are you doing with JSN?
JSN, I think you're definitely if you were taking him in the 6th round, that doesn't feel super likely to pay off now. And your problem here is really that the guys playing ahead of him have just played so well that it's been hard for him to crack the field as much as you want. And then what's also disappointing is that he hasn't really made the plays that you'd want to, like, normally when you have this rookie coming in that you think is incredible, and you're just hoping, or you're playing for this idea that he'll be the starter by week 4 or 5. What you're looking for is for him to, on his limited snap share, to play incredible. And I think unless it truly is this thing where like the wrist injury is holding him back too much, this is definitely disappointing. But I think it's definitely a dip I will buy, just because that's one where I'm definitely more willing to take on the risk that I'm just wrong, that he's just not as good as I think, just because his college profile is so good, and you can sort of blame the injury.
Yeah. I think the thesis is still like you're hoping it's this. You're praying for like the rookie Amon-Ra St. Brown outcome where he doesn't do anything for a while, and then when all the chips are down, he's doing what you need. But I definitely would want to get a discount now relative to where I was taking him before the season started, just based on what we've seen and not getting any of the flashes yet.
Yeah, I agree for sure. So do you anybody else you wanted to touch on here?
I mean, no, not really. I think the best thing we can do is hop at a draft right now and put our takes to the test. Show the people, show the people.
Sounds good to me.
All right, let me go ahead and share screen here.
So, sorry, we're not as you can see, we're not as experienced getting our stuff up. But essentially, what we're gonna do here is we like to talk about our takes through the lens of best ball resurrection, just because it is a. Are you okay with me sharing, or do you want me to kick you off?
No, go ahead. Yeah, you can share here. I'm going to go ahead and jump in a draft here for us. I should probably zoom in a little bit, I'm assuming here. Let's or do you have the ability to zoom on your end, or there we go. That looks a little better. And let's get that, make it a little more readable. So we drew the 102 here. Sorry, we didn't give a ton of warning to let you guys jump in the draft with us here. But this way you can kind of see. You'll notice we didn't give a ton of ADP takes during the chart portion of the show because we had planned on hopping in a draft here to kind of show you when the rubber meets the road what we're doing. And so here, my priority. Let's. Do we have anyone in here? If you are in the draft with us, it is illegal for you to not alert us in the chat. But I don't know that we have anyone. That's
okay. So, we're not on the clock. Okay.
I've got. I know what I'm taking here. But I'm willing to hear your. I'm taking this dude. I'm taking this player.
Tyreek over CMC.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's running backs that I really like at the 2-3 turn. The way that it's been shaking out, we'll see if it gets to us in that way. But yeah, I Tyreek is the 102 feels pretty comfy to me personally. The argument for CMC is really strong in that the phenomenon we talked about earlier with zero RB ambiguity is less now. And so you're just not as able to get the values on some of those players with really strong zero RB profiles anymore. So getting that kind of hero RB to hold it down with Christian McCaffrey in the first is more appealing to me certainly now. Like I am probably taking, I think the way that this first round played out through the first three is how I do it.
Are you still chase for the 105?
I'm chased for the 104.
Okay.
Dude, there's no way the Bengals stay that bad, right? Like I refuse to buy.
I'm a bit worried about the Burrow injury.
The way I see it,
the ADOT's been down. Like they just haven't been as aggressive.
How long is that going to linger, though? You got like 3 weeks, because you got to remember this tournament doesn't start until week 6, right?
That is true.
So I think that's a way to play the market over reactions. Like if they're like, for example, if Cooper Kupp makes it back to us here, like my goodness, you better believe
we
like
smash.
I'm willing to risk that, like he should be all the way back. That's one where earlier today when I jumped in my 2 just to kind of get the lay of the land. His ADP, I think, was 27. And I got the 11 and the 12 hole in my drafts. And I was like, I'm not going to take him here at the 1-2 turn, even though I would take Cooper Kupp over Calvin Ridley. Like, whoever quick KKK, like, I hope that name is not a racial illusion. Yeah. But this dude's a crayon eater for sure. Like, Calvin Ridley at 13, you're bad, bro. Like, sorry, not sorry. But Cooper Kupp there at 16, that makes sense. Oh, by the way, like, this elite quarterback in the second round nonsense too. Like, shouldn't people have, like, how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? Like, this shit is not going to age well. Like, we're starting to see that the gap between the elite quarterbacks and the rest of the field that we saw last year was more of an anomaly than the norm. And here we go. We're just taking 2 quarterbacks in the second round again with incredible players on the board. Like, this is Looney Tunes Banana Town to me. Like, taking Jalen Hurts and Pat Mahomes in the second round is not the business. Not a business that I'm going to be investing in.
Can you see that thing? Oh no, you're already on it. Never mind. Isn't there one where isn't the button next to the X? Doesn't that make it bigger?
Oh, it does. It does pop the draft board out.
Okay. What if you shared that one? That one might. Maybe after we make this pick here.
That does sound like the move. Who do you like here? Here at the 2-3 turn. I'm gonna go by position here. Let you look at the running backs. Are there any running backs here that you're really interested in clicking at the 2-3?
No. I'm like, this feels very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Wow. I want to take Wilson, but that doesn't seem right.
No. For me, I'm like maybe DK. I'm also maybe just Mark Andrews and fuck it.
Yeah, let's do Andrews.
I think that's the play, honestly.
Yeah.
Because the receivers are they're all same but different.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, agreed for sure.
The other stuff that
bums we missed out on ETN.
That's what I had been alluding to when I said there's running backs that I really like the 2-3 turn. But we'll see who falls to us here. So Big Poppy takes Josh Jacobs with his first pick. Really, what I'm thinking here is I want receiver. Let me riddle me this. Is because like I'm kind of tempted to play into the Jets doing something different at quarterback. Like by week 6,
you want to bite a dip on Garrett Wilson?
I kind of think so. Like how far can he dip though? Because we could let a faller fall, but I don't think he makes it back to us.
Not
the other guys
I don't think.
Consider would be like Debo or Metcalf here. I'm really not taking any of these running backs. I don't think it's necessary here.
I think Garrett Wilson. I think you did a Sean Siegel on me there.
I'm
where you just kept on talking until the pick was done.
I think that's my MO though, is just keep talking for way too long. Let's pop this out and we'll do the full draft board here. Is that a little better?
Yeah, I think that is much better.
And we can let's see if I can zoom on this a little more.
Yeah, that's much better.
So I don't think we have anyone in here that's watching this stream. No one's identified themselves. So I'm gonna, like, for the most part, put cards on the table, so we can talk through everything. What I'm looking at here is I'm praying to God, because we already have the bet on the Jets doing something that's an alternative to Zach Wilson. Yeah. And so if we get Breece at 47, we're windmill jamming it in.
Yeah.
The other one that I'm just taking all the way to the bank here is Kenneth Walker. I'm super, super excited about.
Yeah.
The other one that I'm taking here is DeAndre Swift. He's not going to make it back at 70. So I'm taking him here at this turn.
Yeah. Agreed.
Stay Hydrated says, how is Garrett Wilson still this valuable to go this high? And so what I would say is you need to think through the range of outcomes. It's not that Garrett Wilson right now with Zach Wilson throwing him the ball is a 2-3 turn, but Garrett Wilson with Garrett Wilson with Joe Flacco, I'm like super pumped about this price, right? Garrett Wilson with Joe Flacco, I'm ecstatic. I'm probably taking Garrett Wilson over like Devonta Smith with Joe Flacco, taking him over Chris Olave with Joe Flacco.
He goes back to being at the early second round.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at like, give me some competent quarterback, and that's how the Garrett Wilson bet pays off here. The other thing is like we did see Garrett Wilson have a couple games with Zach Wilson last season. It wasn't always Mike White and Joe Flacco and the other cast of characters that they rolled out there. He's just such an elite talent that I'm willing to just bet on the upside there. Like DK Metcalf, think about the way I'd frame it is think about it in this way. How much could DK Metcalf outperform this ADP?
Not very much.
Like, what about Deebo Samuel? How much could Deebo Samuel outperform this ADP?
Deebo actually quite a bit.
I agree. More so in the single week range of outcomes, right? Like Deebo's single game ceiling is absurd. To where like even if he doesn't compile crazy stats for you over the course of the season, you're looking at he does enough in single games when the money really matters.
Right. And you have to the contingent value for Deebo is just insane.
Correct.
And I mean he's probably the other strong candidate for who we could have taken. But like you said, DK Metcalf, Saquon Barkley, Lamar Jackson, Rhamondre, T. Higgins. That's funny. Those players are not compelling picks either. So it's super I'm and we've sort of just gone for the upside.
Yeah, I'm always going to build my teams around like trying to capture the crazy ceiling where I'm just winning the tournament now. Oh, DeAndre Swift goes one pick before us. That is very brutal. That's been happening to me all day. I'm pretty sad.
So I mean, it's running Najee, right?
No, at running back, it's starting to be a little scary. I'm definitely interested in Kyren Williams. The other picks I'd be considering here would be like a George Pickens, but that offense isn't great. We auto drafted Kyren Williams. Do you think Kyren was reasonable there?
He it is somewhat reasonable. I think if it were just me drafting, that's probably just a smidge rich for me. But when you draft with somebody else, also good to get players that they're interested in. And none of the players were screaming here either. I think who is interesting would be Javonte, just because it is the Week 6 tournament.
Okay.
But I don't see everybody who's
Yeah. I think you're right. We'll get some receivers that could come back to us that I'm happy with, and running back. It does dry up a little bit where a lot of the guys that we're more interested in, they definitely are, coming off the board a little earlier here. Where this run out here,
we missed the cutoff on the running backs. We're super excited to draft.
this run out of Kenneth Walker, Joe Mixon, James Cook, Breece Hall, DeAndre Swift was less than ideal for us, because those are all guys I would have clicked. And I do think that we probably got the beginning of another tier rather than getting the end of this last tier, which is a little unfortunate.
Yeah, but Kyren definitely like easily strongest role there, and of the players with the really high, unexpectedly really high work share, he's definitely the strongest case to hold on to it. And I think even just his passing down work is almost worth this pick. And then Javonte, you just hope that as he ramps up back up from the ACL tear, that given that it's week 6 and on, just becomes one of those players where we don't see it now, but in the later weeks in the season is a very strong pick. Yeah,
I'm a little less bullish about Javonte than you, because I kind of see that this split in the backfield, I don't see it changing very much regardless of his health. And so really, I think what you're playing for then is you're playing for increased efficiency, both increased efficiency from Javonte himself and from the offense. And so I don't know that that's the bet that I'm super excited to make. But when I consider the alternatives that are going around here, like, oh, who is this rat bastard from the 12 taking Tua here? I mean, this is a good price for Tua. I was just really hoping he'd make it back to us. This guy's taking him entirely unstacked. Ugh. I'm not a fan of the drafter in the 12 here.
3 strikes and you're out.
Yeah. But that's a big bummer for me. Was really my plan here was we get Tua here, and then after the turn, there are a bunch of wide receivers I like. Was going to be happy with whoever the field gave us. But it's fine. We'll navigate around that. The one thing that I'm really considering here is I need to open up some stacking options here. Like we've got a back stack with Stafford and back stack with Russ available here, getting some later receivers with them. So I'm keeping, that's available, but I'm definitely prioritizing pass catchers that increase my optionality now. George Pickens making it all the way to 67 seems interesting to me. I mean, the offense looks bad, but he looks like a pretty interesting player. I do know that going back and forth does turn my my overlay off, so I wanted to get back here and refresh in time to get my overlay up. And I've got a couple different guys here that I like. Not really interested in any of the quarterbacks at this point, really just looking at wide receiver and running back. Is there anyone here that you have a strong preference for?
It doesn't feel strong. So Mike Williams out, Drake London definitely feels like you're getting the bad season here. Yeah, let's scroll down a little. Jerry Jeudy feels very good here, actually.
Okay, I'm definitely Kirk over Jeudy, but I'd be willing to, and Kirk does have the higher ADP, but I'd be down to double tap that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Just because I'm, like we talked about earlier, I'm comfortable playing it through Sutton as well. Not that I think that, he's a better player than Jeudy, but if the market's going to give me Sutton so much cheaper, I'm down to oblige.
I mean, they're sort of cheap enough that you can double stack here.
Just get both.
Who would you be taking instead?
Instead of Jeudy here, probably not I'm not terribly interested in anyone. Dotson, I think, is going to be a good faller to just let him fall. So yeah, Judy is definitely the most appealing receiver here. JSN is like tempting, but I'm going to let him fall. I'm pretty interested in Montgomery. Actually, I'll do Judy here. I'll see if we can get Montgomery to fall because of the injury. But just the way that offense has, they tipped their hand, and I think that when Montgomery comes back healthy, he's gonna take enough of the role that he's valuable, and that he's frustrating for Gibbs managers.
Yeah.
But, I'll give us a quick recap here. So we're through 7 rounds. Started with Tyreek Hill, Mark Andrews at the 2, or Tyreek Hill from the 2 spot, Mark Andrews, Garrett Wilson at the 2-3 turn. Get sniped by 1 pick on DeAndre Swift. Big bummer there. Had to settle for Kyren Williams at the 4-5 turn. Followed it up with Javonte Williams. Then at the 6-7 turn, we double tap receiver with Christian Kirk, Jerry Jeudy. So I think that we're not behind the 8 ball on receiver. We're definitely looking for, Garrett Wilson to get a quarterback upgrade to feel good about that pick and the price that we took him at. But I think that's pretty squarely within the range of outcomes. As far as our quarterback options here, my goodness, the guy from the 4 hole is unhinged. Taking Justin Fields at 52, unstacked, and then taking Geno Smith to stack with Tyler Lockett, but taking Geno in the 7th, where I've seen Geno falling, well into the hundreds today in the couple drafts that I did, and his ADP is also around there. So we've got some live ones in the room for sure. I don't think that's particularly good to take Geno here in the 7th round. I'm not sure what the fuck is going on with quarterback in this draft. We've got Geno going at 76, Tua going unstacked at 61. This price is reasonable for Tua, but just taking him unstacked. The Kirk Cousins price seems reasonable to me here. Like, he definitely should be moving on up. But this guy's going to be hurting bad for receiver in the 3 hole. Like, starting DK Metcalf, Marquise Brown, and those are his only 2 receivers through 7. I think he's going to be in for a pretty bad time here.
Yeah, that makes sense. What we did get a question in about a while ago. How are we looking at late season matchups in this tournament now that we have more information on which defenses are good? I'm still mostly ignoring defensive matchup stuff.
Yep.
Just because you're still talking about that's 3.5 months away.
Yep.
And we only have 3 weeks of data. Like, it's so hard to say, hey, we know which defenses to avoid now. That is just not, it's not a factor for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's you don't actually LaPorta goes here at 90. That was who I was going to suggest at 95. I'm just being too greedy on LaPorta. I just need to start aggressively taking him. He's going to rise so much. Very bummed to have 0 LaPorta through 3 drafts. But to go back to the defense thing, you don't actually know what defenses are good. We think we know what defenses are good, but number one, it's only been 3 weeks. The Cowboys were the best defense to ever play in the National Football League through week 2, so we just don't know what defenses are good. The only thing is what 2 teams play each other in week 17. And that is the way that you should play this game. You don't know anything. None of us know anything, but we do know what the NFL schedule is. Right. I mean, within reason,
right.
Maybe another game gets canceled. Maybe an earthquake happens and swallows the ground whole. But yeah.
You want to, So, Najee, we're still not interested. So JSN, would be the 8th round.
None of these running backs are ones that I'm
Right.
very interested in here. I think that by taking our 2 early ones, we kind of put ourselves in a position to where we can wait on running back and just attack the position through volume. I think this is pretty reasonable for JSN. The other thing, this is a pretty micro thing. Week 5 players should increase in value because they don't have a bye technically in this tournament. So I'm willing to do bets on JSN here. We do have now that we missed LaPorta, who I was really hoping to get Andrews LaPorta as my tight ends and just be done at the position. I'm not really super interested in Kyle Pitts. As far as quarterback is concerned, we've got Lawrence in the 90s here.
Yeah, let's take him.
I think it's reasonable. We also have that first week of the playoffs correlation, and then there's a couple other good matchups here that I actually like as far as like getting players. Not specifically talking about like, oh, I'm happy to target Tampa Bay or Carolina, like the defenses. I'm happy to target these teams because of the optionality they give me in the draft and what players it opens up for me for stacking purposes. Just to talk it through while we're on the clock, are there any of these receivers here where you would be considering taking them over Lawrence?
No, I don't think so. I think it's tinned out enough at receiver here that Lawrence is the right pick. I think it's also interesting because given we sort of like we showed some concern about Lawrence at the start of the draft. Would you mind scrolling back to quarterback and just see who we took, which quarterbacks we took him over? So we took him over Deshaun Watson, over Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff. But that feels right. It still feels like Trevor Lawrence should go ahead of that tier. Because, like, we did know some concerns that he hasn't played very efficiently, but we are only through 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think this was always where he should have gone, just like in this range with these kinds of pocket passers. And I always thought that Tua should be going where he was going. And so the market is finally going to get that right. It seems like Tua and Trevor Lawrence are going to complete their Freaky Friday ADP swap that they did over the summer, and they'll be more appropriately priced. I mean, I guess I'll fucking mush myself all the way here, but Tua should be like probably a 4th round pick. If you're not taking, like let's go back and look at the board. So like I think this group of quarterbacks, Hurts, Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, I'm willing to move Herbert up with Lamar in that range. That should probably go like right here, like right where this Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, TJ Hawkinson, like where you're pick. I probably still take Kenneth Walker over them. So I think they're like back of the 3rd, beginning of the 4th type picks. And I think that Tua should be right here with Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert and Tua shouldn't really go all that different from each other. In fact, like you probably could say that Tua should go right with Mahomes, Hurts, Allen, Lamar. I don't think it's that crazy. Like, I know it sounds weird. I know we have to unanchor ourselves from past prices, but I think it's right. Pretty sure that's correct.
Yeah.
The 12 hole exists. The 12 hole exists on this earth to tilt me. This guy's out here drafting. I'm just going to be blunt. 12 hole, if you ever end up watching this stream, it's nothing against you as a person, but you are drafting like an idiot. You're taking all my players that I want, but you're taking them like multiple rounds earlier than they should go. And so it's just tilting me. Like Luke Musgrave probably shouldn't go at 108, but he's someone I'm super excited to get like at 143. Hunter Henry shouldn't go at 109. Someone I'm super excited to get at 146. I hate you, 12 hole. You're my mortal enemy now.
So we chase stats, then we make blood enemies for life.
Yeah, then we tilt our faces off.
Blood vendettas.
Yeah. So
we're sort of balanced here through 9 rounds, which does give us like a little bit of sort of optionality, and as we don't necessarily have to pick a certain position.
yeah, I'm gonna give us a little more time to decide on this here, because I think we have a couple tough decisions based on who's left on the board. We'll just look at QB just to like see what's still available. And so for me, I'm in a spot where I basically want to push QB and just like take the fallers.
Yeah.
And so I'm really more so interested in running back and wide receiver here. Out of these running backs and wide receivers, is there anyone that's very interesting to you?
I think Dubs is pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's the one that stuck out to me as well.
And then I'm gonna throw out a name that's probably too early, but I think will be not early enough. Is Rashee Rice?
I think you're right, man. You'd been trying to sell me on Rashee Rice all off season when we were drafting together, and I'll go ahead and, I mean, it's not even like to the point where I need to capitulate yet. He hasn't done a ton yet, but he's the best receiver on the team, right? Like,
yeah, easily. And he's in week 1, 2.4 yards per route run. Week 2, 3.3 yards per route run. Week 3, 2.8 yards per route run. And then his route share in week 3. Now maybe it was because of the blowout, but it did get up to 51%. So definitely feels like an emerging breakout there.
So we're good with Dubs here, yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Here's the question. Do we try to play the ADP game on Rice and push him all the way around? Or do we just say that he is the best option here? I mean, the ceiling case for Rice above all these other receivers is pretty tantalizing.
So Rashee Rice, would be pick 154 by
Roschon goes. That was what I was gonna discuss. And
so he's like the end of the 12th normally, but we're getting him in the beginning of the 11th.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't overthink that even a tiny bit.
Okay.
Like,
yeah, he's the best ceiling for sure here. And you know what? I think we got done a favor this last week by him where he didn't convert that touchdown. He ended up down on like the 1-inch line because he's probably going higher if he converts that. But to me, just through the first couple weeks, that looks like the guy that you want to have in that offense. I don't see any of the other receivers emerging enough to have a role that you're excited about, but he is I think the range is widest because he's a rookie. We've seen the least. We have the least amount of data to know what he is. And in the limited stuff that we've seen, he's flashed a little. So
yeah. Where when he plays, he's been heavily targeted, and when he's targeted, he makes plays. And then he's a second round draft pick as well. So and this doesn't start till week 6 as well. So like to me, I'm obviously maybe a little bit too bullish, but to me it feels like we got the Chiefs starting best wide receiver in the 11th round.
Yeah, no, you're right. This is where the ADP value goblin comes out of me, and he's like, oh, but if you liked Rashee in the 11th, wouldn't you love him in the 12th? It's like, yeah, you would, but like, what are you really? There was if Roschon had been on the board still there, that was going to be what I was going to push for.
Yeah, and that would have been a hard argument to resist. But definitely glad we got glad we got Rashi there for sure. Some of these picks, like it is interesting where you see like Odell Beckham and
Josh Palmer 126 is that's just funny, man.
Pat Fryermuth in the 11th. That does. I'm definitely happy that we took Rice, but Pat Fryermuth in the 11th. That does seem like inefficiently like low.
I don't think it's that inefficient. I think like 10th. I guess like where he went in the 11th. But he's like middle of the 11th. I don't know. 10th seems kind of reasonable to him. The offense is bad.
Yeah.
He hasn't been. I think we're just anchored a little bit too much to his previous price. I think like so this Pitts price I think is about correct. This LaPorta price is not correct. It should be a lot earlier. This Ingram price is not correct. It should be later. This Goddard price is not correct. It should be later. The Kittle
you
price,
think Goddard should be later than 87?
Yeah. At tight end, what's happening is the people are trying to draft guys because they're wish casting that Dallas Goedert's going to be this elite tight end, and he's not. Dallas Goedert is Hunter Henry. Show me the difference. There isn't a difference. He's just on a better offense, but he's less involved. I don't care. Get out of here with your expensive, fancy Hunter Henry. I'll take later Hunter Henry. He's not good either. I know that early in his career, we were excited about him potentially being a really good player. This is a watching ball take. So huge grain of salt, probably not worth listening to. He's looked bad with the ball in his hands. He looks like a slow lumbering dude where it's not a guy that they should be forcing the ball to. He seems like, I don't know. To me, he seems like he should be like a Jason Witten type of tight end. My primary options are covered. Better check it down to Goddard.
Yeah, that is fair. He's not his yards per target have never really been that high. And as somebody pointed out, he is 28. So you want to?
I think we need running back here. I am really not into clicking AJ Dillon though.
Let's see who are the other running backs then.
I've got one that I want.
Okay. Who do you want?
I would do Spears here.
Yeah, agreed.
Man, the Derrick Henry snap share is super, super concerning to me. I don't think we're getting Derrick Henry this season. I hate to break it to people. I'm pretty sure that what we're going to get is the player formerly known as Derrick Henry. He'll still have the big runs and break off a couple things. You're not going to get the volume you need for Derrick Henry to get there, plain and simple. The days of him getting high 20s touches is true, well and truly over.
So great point. Jameson, the week starts in week 6. Clear, probably a clear misprice here. Where does Jameson go? Is he available?
He off the board? Yeah, he is off the board, but I do agree. I took him in an earlier draft today. There's a running back that I was considering here. Who's
there a quarterback and tight end?
Oh, let's do Russ here actually.
Yeah.
Let's do Russ. Good call. Thank you. Completes our double stack with Javonte Judy. So now we can stand pat at quarterback here. Just I'll review our team for the audio listeners here. At quarterback, we have Trevor Lawrence and Russell Wilson. Running back, we have Kyren Williams, Javonte Williams, and Tajay Spears. At wide receiver, we have Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, Christian Kirk, Jerry Jeudy, JSN, Romeo Doubs, Rashee Rice, and then at tight end, holding it down for us is Mark Andrews. I did notice that we did stack our quarterback buys. We did in fact do that. So I guess we are taking a third quarterback here. Especially, so this is a nitty micro thing, but because we have fewer regular season weeks, eating a zero at, eating a zero at either onesie, tight end or quarterback, becomes worse. It was never ideal before to eat a zero at a onesie because you did two guys on the same bye, but we'll end up needing to take a third quarterback here, and so we have a couple good options that I like late.
Yeah.
I have some sneaky stuff. We'll just talk about it openly if someone wants to snipe me on this.
So Stroud just went.
Yeah,
that feels like a great pick.
It does. The 12 hole is just continuing to hurt me. I think it's a bad practice to take three quarterbacks here when you've taken Tua. I think that's not great.
It's some great picks, but a bad team.
Yeah. He has his wide receiver 5 is Jaden Reed, which I like Jaden Reed, but wide receiver 4 is Adam Thielen. Wide receiver 3 is Cortland Sutton. And this guy has, Christian Kirk, Diet Christian Kirk that he took 13th overall, and we got Christian Kirk in the 6th. So,
right,
I'm just salty. I'm gonna lay it on the 12 spot thick tonight. This guy's not pulling any punches. The way I think we have to play this is we know that we need one more quarterback. So one of these is a quarterback spot. And then we are running back, tight end. So our draft is, we got boxed in a little bit in positional need, what we have to take here. I don't know if you disagree at all.
And well, I agree with your point about needing the third quarterback. And then how many running backs do you think total? 6?
I think 6 total.
Okay. And so we have 2, 6, 8, 2. Is that what? No, it's 3, 6, 7, 2.
Yeah, it'll be a 3, 6, 7, 2.
Yeah, not our finest. We didn't want to go in needing to pick who we need to pick, but sometimes that is how it goes.
For me, I'm pretty happily putting in Chuba here.
Yeah, sounds good.
I was strongly considering him last time.
Yeah.
Our other quarterback options, I think it's probably just fine to go ahead and do Stafford here and stack him with Kyren. I don't hate that at all.
Go back to running back for a second. Any interest in Jeff Wilson?
I think it's thin. If we are going to take him, I'd rather do Stafford here and then just just get
Let's
Jeff
do Stafford
Wilson next. All right. So our quarterback problem has been solved. We've got Matt Stafford. Our playoff stacking is looking a little light. We do have some good stacking with Chuba and the Jags here. We've got a little bit for Lawrence. Ideally, we'd like to find something for, our other quarterbacks here to get some bringbacks. Although I don't really anticipate getting a New York Giants player because I don't think we're taking another wide receiver to go with to have a bringback for Stafford. So that one's just going to be, it is what it is. And I don't really see us getting a Charger to go with Russ. And then our preferred tight end of Hunter Henry is gone, so I don't think we're getting that.
Where has Rico Dowdle gone in this? I assume so.
I don't believe he has. He's gone later. Yeah, so that's what I would be. Yeah,
Rico Dowdle is obviously even at this point, super strong pick.
Yes,
because he's got a role, and then the backfield is super valuable.
Justice Hill gone. So we're 4 running backs here. The other ones I'd be considering. I mean, this is maybe where like we start to get into the Keontay Ingram territory. The
So
there's a couple options. This is what I'm starting to think is going to be the right play.
So we've got round 16, 7, and 18 left.
Yeah. And we do still need a tight end. So let's kind of pick through here. This is fine. This is whatever. It's not super exciting. I don't think we can even justify Dulcich at any point. I think he's
on IR right now, right?
Yeah, but he'll be back, before too long in the once this tournament kicks off.
Who's interesting? K. Dotton is interesting now that we sort of like have a bit more information that's helpful. Like, we have this 78% root share. Like, we're living in a reality where Baker Mayfield is making the offense look solid.
We do have the Washington tight ends too. So I think the way that we play this is tight end is our last overall pick. And so we just do running back on this turn, get the guys that we want.
Yeah.
And just take whatever's left at tight end. Because we're, if this team isn't using Mark Andrews' score for the majority of weeks, it's probably not going terribly well for us.
Yeah, I get sad when I don't play on FFPC because I do love my tight end in the flex.
I'm gonna sleep poorly tonight knowing I have 0 LaPorta through 3 resurrection drafts. It feels so bad. It feels like such a misplay to me. Like, yeah, I'm just all right. I'm making a decree for myself. If LaPorta is there in the 7th, I take LaPorta like pretty much regardless of who's available. I mean, it would have to be like Tua for me to not take LaPorta in the 7th.
That is good. I think that's a helpful like sort of rule of like, because like obviously what you're coming against here is a scenario that you think or because of the information we have a pretty good idea that LaPorta is an extreme value in all of the early resurrection drafts, and hopefully will only go higher. And so like how high do you push that, and where you're sort of like where you're sort of drawing the line now is like any I want to pick the 80. I want to pick them at a point where I'm going to get him 80% of the time.
Yeah. And the other way that I think about it is I'm going to go back and show this little thing because this is super useful for me. This effective draft capital tooltip, I use this a lot in my drafts, especially the longer a tournament has gone on and the more ADP has moved. This is as close to cheating as you can get because it's basically telling you what the entire field has paid as the price for the player. And so then you can know if you are getting an advantage or a disadvantage on that player at the cost you're paying relative to the field. And so what I'm going to start doing is getting a lot of my LaPorta in. And what I know I'm going to see is I'm going to see this effective draft capital number scream up for LaPorta, where you're just going to see him rise so much that you're going to have a large advantage over the field when he's going in the 4th round.
Would you mind just scrolling to the running back? So Deion Jackson, no. Ty Chandler, no. Dante Foreman, no. You're Strong, no. Cordero Patterson. So yeah, those feel like the strongest pick here is Keontay Ingram.
You like Ingram over Breida?
They're sort of the same, I think.
Okay.
Like, Saquon, he does have that high ankle sprain, but I think by week 6 we'll be back pretty close to 100%.
Okay. I'm always willing to bet on a high ankle sprain. Just mushing a player, yeah.
Okay, so you
for
want to
me,
take Breida then?
Yeah, they're both bringbacks for us, but this is a bringback with our quarterback. So I think I lean
100%, so way more valuable then.
I wouldn't say way more valuable, but it is more valuable, right? The correlation will be a little bit stronger to have it be quarterback to opposing team running back than it would running back to opposing team wide receiver. It's like we're talking about like microscopic differences. It probably doesn't matter too terribly much. For me, the thing that made the decision, Breida, is the high ankle having the information on the high ankle sprain on Saquon. And I think, like if you look historically at high ankle sprains and like what probability the player missing more time than expected or not playing a full complement of snaps for the rest of the season, like I think you're going to find that I think it's a pretty good bet to have Breida at this price. I want to say that I'm 100% Breida right now through 3 drafts.
So just to play devil's advocate a bit, there's an ESPN article now with the Giants say that Barkley is day to day, and he could play in week 4.
Yeah, I mean, he was always reported as day to day. They said he could have gone last week, but I'm more of the opinion that like if this truly was it's either a misreported injury, it wasn't an actual high ankle, or if it is a high ankle, that's like
you think that the Giants are basically doing malpractice and like makes you even more interested in Breida?
I just think your risk of re-injury is probably pretty high for a guy coming back that quick from a high ankle. And like this is like starting to talk about stuff that we should just leave to the doctors, but just humor me for a little bit. The mechanism of injury for a high ankle sprain is like way closer to a fracture than like it's pretty bad. Like a high ankle sprain is really bad. You have the ligament damage, and then you also have like microfractures around where the ligaments are attaching to bone. So it's pretty serious. Like it's not high ankle sprain. Like calling it a high ankle sprain is underselling the severity of the injury.
It's a misnomer.
Yeah, it should just be like, yeah, the guy's leg got caught in a lathe, but we turned it off just in time, is what a high ankle sprain really should be.
His leg got caught in a what?
A lathe.
I'm like sorry.
Lathe, a lathe. I don't know. Am I not pronouncing that well?
I'm from Ireland, so I don't know what that.
It's like a piece of heavy machinery. Like you just mushed his fucking leg.
Okay. Yeah, that doesn't seem helpful for an NFL player.
It's a bit of a gross exaggeration on my part, but I was trying to paint a vivid picture here.
So who are obviously quite a few tight ends have gone now since we set up that queue.
Yeah, I think our guys are still there though.
Okay.
Got all our favorites. Let's take a look at our playoff view here. So week 17, we ended up with some actually not bad week 17 correlation here. We got 3 games with good pieces here too. Like Stafford, Kyren Williams, I really like because there's the positive correlation of him being very involved in the passing game, and also the negative correlation of the quarterback running back, where like we've already seen this play out with Kyren, where he's getting all the touchdowns. Stafford's underperforming. So I like this for the potential ping pong effect. And then we've got the Jags in Carolina here with Chuba as profiling more like the pass catching back. So in a scenario where the Jags are eating, maybe Chuba is getting a little more work. Week 16, we've got Tajay and JSN. I do really like getting rookies in my playoff correlations, just because that's probably when they should be producing at their highest. And then let's see our week 15, and we got a little week 15 here too. So we're as far as our correlation, we ended up doing okay. This draft capital is going to be all wonky right now with ADPs being not solidified. So I don't really care much about
makes
this
sense
right now.
I just want to, shit fit. Sack, he kidnapped my family, and he told me that he would only release them if we did a resurrection draft.
My
At the end of
drafts
this
with Drico were so good this offseason. All of our best ball teams that we did together over on FFPC are just crushing. We've got some really good looking ones here.
And now you have to live with the reality of my underdog drafting.
Now here's I'm gonna throw some guys in the queue, and you.
Okay, we
I'll
have
let
15 seconds.
I'll let you be my random.org here.
Okay. So K. Dotton went, Logan Thomas, Cole Turner, and Mike Gesicki. I think it is Logan Thomas.
Okay, you like him over Cole Turner?
Yeah.
Okay.
Assuming he doesn't retire.
Yeah, I mean that was a brutal concussion. Oh man, this is what the people tune in for. They tune in to hear me complain about NFL rules.
Zach, what bye week did Logan Thomas have?
Week 14. We're chilling.
Okay. I got a little nervous there for a second.
But man, those head-to-head hits, like that hit that Logan Thomas took, that's an instant ejection in my book. You hit a guy like that, sorry, you're done. Go take a timeout. Think about what you did.
Yeah.
But that's enough of my grandstanding. Let's review the team for the audio listeners. At quarterback, we have Trevor Lawrence, who we got just before pick 100. Russell Wilson in the 140s. They do have the same bye, though, so we did have to take a third quarterback in Matthew Stafford. I don't think that's terrible given the capital we spent on quarterback here. At running back, we have Kyren Williams, Javonte Williams. We have Tajay Spears, Chuba Hubbard, Keontay Ingram, Matt Breida. A little thin, but I'm very glad that we got 6 running backs here with the way that this room shook out.
Yeah, I think that's a strong 6 for.
Yeah,
for taking Javonte, 6, I've definitely had weaker 6s.
If Javonte comes back, we're in serious business. If he starts getting more opportunity or being more efficient. Wide receiver, we have Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, Christian Kirk, Jerry Jeudy, JSN, Romeo Doubs, and Rashee Rice. And then at tight end, we have Mark Andrews and Logan Thomas. Got a good amount of playoff correlation, 3 in week 17 that we already covered. We went ahead and added another one to week 16 with Logan Thomas, and we added one more to week 15 with Logan Thomas. So we have at least 3 game stacks in every week of the playoffs. I do like to see that. We've got 2 quarterback running back stacks, which is something that I think the field is not doing at a high enough rate. I did a lot of research on this in the offseason and played with some models, and it definitely seemed to suggest that quarterback running back stacks, when done correctly, are a very powerful way to attack large field tournaments. And so I do think that that's going to be a trend that we'll see going into next year. I would certainly anticipate people catching on to that. But that was our resurrection draft. Drico, you got anything you want to add on this one before we let the people go?
No. Obviously, well, I said no, and now I'm gonna try and think of something to say. I guess it is. It's always tricky. I think this is my first draft since what is it? My first draft in 3 weeks. So I know I definitely feel a little rusty after some drafting time off. But it in these resurrection tournaments, it always makes sense to be thinking about like week 6, not exactly what happened this week. So like that's why I sort of pushed for Javonte, where as that ACL tear gets even better, sort of Rashee Rice, hoping that he's a starter. And I know Sack, I know you're super excited about LaPorta, because like it's like, okay, if he's doing this in 3 weeks as a rookie, like what could he be in several weeks' time?
Yeah, I honestly think that you getting me to click Rashee Rice there is probably one of the best decisions we made in the whole draft. If we look at what we sacrificed for him, it wasn't much. You know, Jaden Reed's a player where I would have liked to have him, but I think I prefer Rashee Rice over him, and we already got dubs on this team. I think the Rashee Rice, if I had to pick a selection that's going to age the best on this team, it's probably the Rashee Rice one. The other one that could age extremely well is JSN if he does get involved at 95.
Yeah.
Could be really exciting. And if the Jags turn it around, I was honestly, my biggest disappointments, aside from the 12 hole just being just an absolute knob for us here. I was kind of disappointed to not get Zay Jones to come back here. I thought that would be a really nice little double stack here in the 10th round with Trevor Lawrence, especially because I laid out my thesis for that offense earlier. I would have been doing cartwheels to get.
I do
Christian
think
Zay Jones
if you are going to take a bet on an offense that's struggled, on a player on an offense that's struggled so far, especially if you're going to do that, you should probably stack that offense.
Yeah.
Where, like, if you're taking someone like Jerry Jeudy, then mix him, stack or Javonte, stacking them with Jeudy, Javonte, Russell Wilson. That way, if that offense actually is better than we thought, then you're all sort of bubbling up together. The same with the Jaguars, where if you're going to take a Jag, you're probably better off actually making a bet on the team rather than the individual player.
Yeah, extremely well put. And that's kind of the whole. It's really poignant to say that for the resurrection drafts, because that's kind of the way that I liked to attack the before the season started drafts. Is I want to attack a lot of the teams that people were underrating. Like my big targets there were like, I really thought New England was underpriced. I wanted to take shots on Ritter. I wanted to take shots on Howell, all those guys going really late, because you don't need a lot for them to outperform their price. And so it's the same thing here. When we get guys like Lawrence, where the market was so certain he was a 6th round pick for a long time over the summer, and then all of a sudden we get him at the 9-10 turn, it's like, well, the pendulum might have swung a little too far. I think this is probably close to efficient. I would have been ecstatic. We got him at the 8-9 turn. I would have been ecstatic if he came all the way back in the 10th. But I think given the way the board was at that point and our needs on our team from a roster construction standpoint, he was the best pick. And so I think it was reasonable to take him there at the beginning of the 9th.
Makes sense for sure. I think we should probably call it there lest we go into 3 hours.
I think this is a great stopping point. So for those of you that made it with us all the way through a resurrection draft and many charts, we appreciate your viewership and hope that we gave you some valuable takeaways and things that you can use in your own drafting, your own fantasy teams. Thanks for that, guys, and have a great night.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.